Kimberly. Mrs. Fisher?
That would have been funny. I guess I should probably mute it considering what it says.
Yeah, I think you should.
Call to order the special meeting of the governing board, Thursday, March 10th, 6:30 p.m. All rise for the pledge. Do we have a flag?
Yes.
Here we go.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, all members of present except for Mr. Bear. Can I have a motion to adopt the agenda?
I move that we adopt the agenda.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Wait, but before we say can we possibly look at this agenda? We have 2.5 hours, 7 items, and the only one that's child-centered is the very last.
Okay.
Is there any of these that we can move off to a second session and maybe?
Well, if
Focus?
you look at the first 3 or 4, they're going to take about 5 or 10 minutes, I imagine, each. They're just clarifications.
And the budget ones are going to take the other 2.5 hours.
I would make a motion if you want to move that item up.
Can we move I would like to move that we adopt the agenda, moving the Student Rights and Responsibilities Handbook to
About number.
first priority.
Okay, yeah, she amended the motion. Do I have a second?
No.
How about if we move it to number 4? And that way we get the small things out of the way real quick, and then we tackle that. So my motion is to move it up to letter D and slide everything else down.
I'll second.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
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 Okay, that's the way it'll proceed then. I just wanted to get these little things out of the way. It's just, okay,
It's going after C.
yeah, after C. Okay, the first item is executive session minutes. I know we had a couple things. Okay, Ann, you want to take it?
I attended Bolt's along with actually Mrs. Fisher, and one of the sessions was on executive minutes. It actually happened to be, I believe, not shortly after we had our last executive session, and they talked about the minutes and the requirements for those, and that it caused me to come in afterwards and check out the minutes of our executive session and find that they're a lot sparse. So I provided this page from that presentation as well as the state statute, specifically B and C of the state statute 38-431.01, meetings shall be open to the public. Talks about minutes, specifically that the Attorney General expects the minutes of executive sessions shall include items set forth in subsection B, paragraphs 1, 2, and 3, which is date, time, place, members of the public body recorded as either present or absent, and then an accurate description of all legal actions proposed, discussed, or taken. Oh, sorry, that's 4. I probably should. 3 is a general description of the matters considered. So all instructions given pursuant to that section should also be included. And so in my review of minutes, we have not been doing that, and I think that we should make sure we're following the statutes.
Do we have I'm asking, do we have a policy that discusses specifically on executive sessions? Jim?
We have a policy on executive session, but it's not going to address the quality of the minutes or the extent of the minutes, I would say.
Well, then, Ann, with that, what do you think we feel to remedy this going forward? What do you? How far do you want to deliver or take this? By putting it in policy, by just a reminder now?
Well, I want to make sure we're following statute.
Okay,
I don't think we need a
of course.
policy change, but I guess what I'm coming to say is that in my review of the ones, at least since I have been on the board, they're extremely general. I particularly paid attention to the most recent one because that was
Okay.
the most fresh in my mind, and I would be happy to submit some notes that I think that those particular executive minutes should be changed to. I don't.
Well,
But we.
beyond that, though, too, I think we have a standard form that we use, that we write on. Why can't we adjust the form to where it meets the what is required, so that we know that these areas are being filled in? But one of the greater issues that I took away from the bolts also is the fact that we have individuals taking notes and taking them out of the meeting with them. That's an executive session. We're opening ourselves up to the liability that those notes are discovered, because we've now taken an executive private session and it can be out there.
Well, we could also.
So it's all of it. There's a lot of things I think we need to do. I agree with Ann. When
Okay.
the lawyer had some ideas, and if we even just take that form and say, this is what statute says we have to have, and maybe have a section so that we're covering those.
And I think the form does include, like, the couple of items, what it may, I don't know, I don't recall what it specifically asks for on that paper regarding the directions and whatnot. So maybe we need to include that. I'm happy to take notes, take the official notes of executive sessions in the future.
That's the vice
I would,
president's job.
okay,
I'm
let's
just saying, if it's helpful,
let's
that's all.
allow ourselves to change the form. if it
Michael?
need to- But also change the admonishment
Yeah.
too.
And we probably need to, amongst us, at least understand what accurate of any instructions allowed under the law means, because I don't want a perception of one or two or three people to be different than what we're expecting. So I don't know.
Okay, so you want to take on that task right here, to change the form?
Well,
Well,
I think we need a template for somebody to understand when somebody looks an attachment, maybe to a governing board policy, not something that we're changing, but an attachment that shows this is what an executive session form.
Well, this
looks
is what we
like.
have in policy
But
here.
but if well, I don't think that form is not. It's an exhibit, so we
Yeah,
can
it's an
change an
exhibit in our
exhibit
policy book,
without
yeah.
Not a
going nuts on
policy
it.
change, yeah.
It's an exhibit change, so maybe we need to look at this exhibit change and decide what changes, if there are changes that we want to put on it, so that could
Okay.
more reflect
Okay.
what Ann was talking about, what Kim's talking about, what we want
Okay,
the public
that
to know
has
we're
to
doing.
originate from somewhere.
Well, isn't that what the study session's for?
Okay,
We have date, time, and place. We can check that off. It's here.
okay,
Members of the public body recorded as either present or absent, so that's all us.
That's
We
all here.
check mark whether we're there or
Correct.
not.
And then we add
Um,
the time when they come in if they
And we
weren't
should
there to
add,
begin with.
we should add whoever else is there.
Yeah, there needs to be
superintendent,
spaces
lawyer,
for,
whoever.
spaces for other individuals.
There's that blank little spot over there.
Yeah.
We have plenty of room, Mike.
Okay,
You want a line there?
Maybe we could have other attendees, a header to the right that says other
So
attendees.
just add another?
Got it?
and, okay, at the bottom, where it says an accurate description of all legal actions, that's what I believe disposition is, where if we came up with some, normally in executive session, we don't come to some conclusion unless
No,
it's
but we
maybe
do
a
give
student.
direction.
Sometimes direction is
yeah.
given out, and what I found, particularly in our last minutes, is that direction was not noted in our minutes
Okay,
at
but
all.
And she's
When
correct.
you say by direction, that's not specific, just say we gave direction.
No, you have to outline the direction that is going to be given. So if you say to a person, I want you to go tell Susie
Okay.
that she's going to pick up her sandbox toys,
Okay, then we
That's a
need,
direction.
that's a direction.
then we need to change that box on the bottom
I-
to
I
include,
But Mike, I don't think it's just in that box, because.
Oh, no, I think it's number
Honestly, put up here, under number 4,
Mm-hmm.
put what we need to have there, because Ann's correct, and I did actually go, because I too came back from the Bolts, and I went over the last 2 years of minutes, and none of it, they were all like just a couple of words. of
we
the
are
subject
consistent.
okay,
or-
how
but-
about we change that from items of discussion / directions?
I would actually put items of
I would make a
discussion,
5
add
and just
another one
Five
with
of
direction.
discussion, that's directions.
Yeah, I mean, if you
Okay.
have to, if there is any direction given and it is not just a discussion,
Okay,
then a
Then we
direction is
actually
given.
put that on there.
direction given to,
It doesn't matter who,
Okay.
just direction and then maybe
Okay.
a couple of lines so that we can write it.
Okay,
And then what does disposition mean to anybody here?
that's just,
I'm
disposition
just saying, what
was,
does it mean to you?
it means if we, for instance, a student appeal.
And what does it mean
What
to
would the
you?
decision would be
Yeah,
on
yeah.
that student appeal?
Well, wouldn't that be the direction?
Well, see, and here's the problem I have with even having that there, because we can't vote on anything in an
Correct.
executive session anyways.
So I would say we don't
Student
need the
appeals
word
we
But
do.
student
disposition.
appeals, we do.
Yes,
Anything
and that would be
related to
under
students.
direct-
We haven't
and
had
that
one we haven't had one in a while.
But that would be
Oh, no,
under
we did have
direction.
We did have a whole bunch of
one.
them.
We had,
We
yeah,
had
a whole
promotion
series.
and demotion.
Promotion
Yeah.
and demotion.
But wouldn't that be under direction?
I would
Oh.
say so.
Okay.
And then
I'm not sure what the
Then let's just,
disposition
Was put there for.
was put
Could
there for.
we leave that there until maybe, Kim, you could find out why it was ever there, and then we could decide to,
okay.
get rid of that box if there's
Okay.
not a rationale
Yeah,
behind it
when-
that we
again,
don't know
when I
about.
used to do this and we did the
Yeah.
student things, I would say the
Well,
board
that's what I,
voted
Right, I don't-
did
for the
too.
superintendent's
Correct.
recommendation or voted against the
Right.
superintendent's recommendation.
No,
That's
the-
how I'd fill that out.
The other thing that I find confusing is why do we adjourn it in there and then come out here and adjourn it again?
Well,
It-
we
it's-
don't adjourn it in there, we
it
adjourn it out here.
out here, and
It-
that's when
It stays
it's
on the same,
officially
it's the
adjourned.
it stays on this form. You write it in on this form.
I don't think we were doing that.
I know I was.
Okay.
don't
I know I
like
was
that.
when I used to be.
Yeah.
that-
Okay.
And then you give, and then.
Because it's a
yeah.
different time than what is in the minutes that we
Okay.
approve later. That's what I'm going off of.
Yeah.
So, any other add-ons?
And I guess just to make sure that the items of discussion is not just a reiteration of what we have listed on the agenda for the public to see. It has to have some substance around the discussion that occurs in there.
Well, I think it should be the topics.
Yeah.
Okay,
In other words, we talk about Susie Q's employment.
let's pick
we-
on Johnny
we-
now.
Okay, we put Susie Q's employment. We talk about Johnny pulling Susie Q's hair. We put that Johnny pull,
Okay.
that's what we're discussing.
Well, I think we don't have to change the form for that. That's just
So
interpreting.
I just was, since we're talking about it, I'm bringing that up so we can get it all out there now.
You guys get that? I took notes
so,
here
yeah.
and it probably matched with yours, so.
Okay.
Okay,
Is that everything? Because I don't remember anything else from that meeting.
That was
okay,
my concern.
great. Let's move on to the board budget. It's atrocious, not atrocious, but we gotta figure out how we spend our money.
Well,
Our-
I actually had asked Dr. V to put this one on because my concern was that with 3 board seats up, I know that Ann and I have attended a lot of events over the last year. And if that with 3 seats up, if there's 3 new board members, the current budget will not cover them attending, and these things that we attend are very important, especially when if you're not a part of schools, if you're not you don't work in schools, explaining open meeting laws, explaining all this. So that was the reason I put it on, is I think we need to have a budget that's realistic, assuming that there's a possibility that 3 new board members could need complete training. They will have to attend a lot of these.
Well,
And then, and even
Absolutely.
the existing board members still need to attend some of these because the legislature changes everything, sometimes multiple times in a year, and sometimes it's just new rules and new things, and it's important that we attend them. And I just thought that the budget, so I had asked that we just see what we did do. I do have a couple of questions for Kim when I was looking at it. I should have caught them before, when I was looking at it here. There's a couple of the conferences, they have either me and Miss O'Brien or me and Miss Ordway. And I'm pretty sure that all 3 of us attended them. The law conference and the annual conference.
I did not attend the law conference. I ended up being out of state.
Yeah,
The
she
law
was-
conference? What about the annual conference?
I believe the law conference is the only conference I
Okay,
missed.
well,
but
my
that-
concern is
We
the
need
bottom
to talk
line.
about the bottom line.
The bottom line, if we're gonna continue to go all these conferences, it's not in the budget to do that. I mean, we have a budget of 12,500, we're over it by 6,000 already. So either we change one or the other, or we gotta pick and choose which of these conferences that are that we go to. So, and, you know, some of this stuff, of course, we have printing the board books, the digital letterhead, our Deer Valley University. Some of this stuff is just office supplies, so, but the big chunk of it is conferences and travel, so, which is only, what, 10,000? We have 10,500 in our budget for conferences and travel for 5 people. And we have how many? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
I guess that's kind of my point, is
9
10,000 for
conferences.
5 people is
9
not
conferences, yeah.
It's not realistic.
Okay,
It's not realistic, even if you just take it down to the law and the other, it's not realistic that you can actually have 5 individuals. And I guess it comes down to the choice of, do we want trained and educated board members or not?
well, what I would ask going forward, and we can bring this forward, because honestly, if we're gonna raise this number, we should be transparent and raise it as a vote in front of the public.
Absolutely,
Oh,
that's why we're
absolutely.
doing
Well,
it
this is just a
here.
study
Yeah.
session.
I know that,
We're just
but what I
talking
would
about it.
ask going forward is comparables to other districts and what they do.
Can we get that, Jim, from other districts, what they have as far as a board budget? Is that public? I guess it would
President
be.
Gregoire, Ms. Fisher, it's not reported anywhere because it's within a category that's not required by the USFR to report separately, but we can certainly ask.
Could we ask, maybe if we just ask like Peoria, Paradise Valley, and Phoenix Union?
Wait,
There-
no, I bet I could ask a couple of them too. I mean, you can do it, and I can do it, and
Yeah.
maybe in between all of us,
I
we
might,
can
I
get it.
might know someone at Phoenix Union.
I might think you would.
Okay.
I might maybe.
Anyway, so I think before we try to address that, we should get a little more knowledge on the
Okay.
subject. And with that is, besides,
The only other thing I would question that's on here, because honestly, I don't question the conferences and stuff, because I know the value. I know the value I've gotten from them, and I've worked in school districts for years. And there is a lot of value in here. So that I don't question. The only one I really question is, do we really need to have the Title 15 printed? It's online.
oh, the book, will we get that big,
It's $700 for a book that
yeah,
I haven't opened it. I go online
I go online too, it's easier to
and I
search.
search. Ann,
I've used mine, but it's just because I know it's there,
You
but
have
I'm happy to go online too, so I don't.
I throw mine at the cat. Oh, I don't have a cat, guys.
Where,
we could just have one copy for here at the
I was
district
gonna
office.
say, where do they go?
We just get a
We all
copy
get a
for our
copy
home. It's
every
just
year.
our copy
Right.
of the statutes.
And it's just so,
Just
yeah.
for the 5 of us to have our own individual
I mean,
copies.
and I don't throw mine, I actually do read it and
Yeah,
use it,
no,
but it is
I
online.
use it.
Yeah.
I do use it
Okay, let's-
periodically, but it's
So we could
not-
get rid of that line.
Okay.
Because we can always check it out of your library here and take it
Right,
home and
can-
use it. Absolutely.
We could just order one.
Okay.
They have one.
Because I
And-
mean, right off the bat, it's a 400 supply budget, and that's $700.80. So we're over it before we even started.
Yeah. Okay. With that notation, unless we should find what other districts are doing. Again, we don't want to we're trying to be efficient here, and for the board to overspend on there is kind of, not something we want to do. So, we'll bring this back as soon as we get more information, okay? Okay, item C is co-hosted live with Dr. V sessions. You know, we got a legal opinion didn't we get it from our council?
Yep.
Now, the way we handled it this last 2 times, I thought was super wonderful, because you guys just called me and said, hey, because the last 2 times I was the person, and they called me and said, hey, Mike, is it okay, we're coming? And I said, great, yep. So we worked it out so there wouldn't be a quorum to,
You might not have remembered Wednesday.
Wednesday, there was a quorum.
There was,
but
and I
Dr.
left.
But Ann left.
oh, I didn't see you there.
Popped in
That's
and
because
she
I left.
popped right
She
back
saw,
out.
that's because she
I'm
saw.
very stealth. However, what I want to bring up on
I
this.
thought you guys worked it
yeah.
out with, okay.
The,
I had-
Okay,
the Live with Dr. V's is another venue for board members to listen to the different regions, the different grade configurations, and whoever happens to come in. And if by putting the words co-hosted by precludes board members from partaking in that education, that's ridiculous. To
Now-
me, the premise that we had it was to promote the working relationship with board members and the superintendent. It was not meant to preclude board members from having that option and that access to the information from your
that is-
constituents.
And that is the only problem, because when we have it co-hosted, if it's not co-hosted,
Right.
we can all attend.
Absolutely.
And then we ourselves can monitor what we say.
Sure.
And what we do. When it's co-hosted, like, let's say it's, in
Right.
this case, it was me that was co-hosted, and I'm the one that panicked. And I told Doctor, I was very upset. And he says,
Yes.
what's a soft post? And I said, no, you don't get it. We're sitting here, and if an employee asks me a question about salaries or budget, I now have to give my opinion. And just by the sheer fact that the two of you are in the room, I just gave it to the two of you as well. And now we have to come back and vote on it. Whereas if I'm not co-hosting,
Correct.
they can ask him a question and I can just choose to shut my mouth.
Absolutely.
So
Which is
that
how it
really-
has worked.
Yeah, so that really is
Yeah.
the biggest issue, is us saying that it's co-hosted. If it's a co-hosted event, then either only that one and one other can go, or we just don't do it co-hosted and we attend.
I would like to get rid of the two words co-host, because I
Okay,
think
let's-
it
well, that was
absolutely,
part of our board
yeah.
Well, I think-
objective, so we just
Right, I think
kinda
we have to
shot
take it
ourselves
back,
in-
though, to the agenda to
Yeah,
vote. But
absolutely.
I think we should still all be, saying, hey, we're
Encouraged,
going to go
yes.
to 1, 2, 3, however
Absolutely.
many we're going to go to. Just get rid of the co-host so that we can all be hearing from those community members, because there's not another, that is a rare opportunity.
opportunity.
Okay,
Right. I
okay.
mean, we can attend, but again, I would caution the board, that also means we have to monitor our opinion. If it is something that could even potentially come to the board in a vote,
Right, Kim, because in the past, prior to this,
Very
we've always been able to do that, and no one has stepped over any lines. Most of what it is a listening.
Okay,
Right.
okay.
Just saying.
So will that we have that on the
no,
April
but not when
agenda?
it was co-hosted, it wasn't.
No, you're
They
right, not-
expected- they
Do we
I
need to
understand
vote
that.
on it, or
Yeah.
just have Dr. V
Well, I think
eliminate the co-host?
even though it was part of our board goals, and I thought we voted on our board goals. So I don't know. You tell me. I'm just procedurally.
You did, and that was an action step in one of the board goals, but
Okay.
we change
We change
action
those.
steps
Okay,
all
great.
the
That's
time.
fine. Then we don't need
If
to
you-
bring it back.
If you
We're-
decide you've got a
Continuous
completely different
improvement.
goal, and that's not going to be the goal anymore, better communication, those
Yeah,
kinds
we
of
have
things.
3
then-
months left in the year, it's kind
I
of.
think there are two that are remaining that would have
Hillcrest?
been co-hosted, and you all, it's great to have the co-host. I enjoyed that tremendously, but the unintended consequences
was not.
That
probably
you
isn't
violate
worth
open
it. Right.
meeting laws,
Right.
Exactly.
Okay.
Right. Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, go
But
ahead.
our goal is actually for this whole calendar year. It's not just for the
Oh, you're
school
right,
year.
you're
So
right.
so I don't care that we don't vote on it, but that was something we were going to evaluate ourselves
would have to
on. So
change the
I think
goal.
should just either change the goal or look at
Okay.
still monitor attendance so we can say
Let's
whether
do
or not we
this.
went.
We're going to have a study session scheduled for April. We're going to put that on the agenda to reevaluate that goal.
Our goals,
That goal.
or just that
Oh,
goal?
to modify that goal. Okay.
Modify that
Thank
goal.
you.
Well, we could use a goal checkup anyways.
Okay.
Okay.
So it'll be on the April, tentatively put on the April study session.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Let's move on. Student Rights and Responsibilities Handbook. So it only took 25 minutes.
Okay. Thank you.
Plus we have a lot of people here too, so that you're very
And we should ask for public comment too, because it's a study
Okay,
session,
yeah,
not
of
a-
course, it's, we had some questions sent to you folks. I think last time at our board meeting, you asked for questions in advance.
I'm almost on.
And I think you got some, didn't you? I know I haven't sent you any because
I asked all my questions.
okay, you asked all your questions, so, I would ask maybe that, Dan, you guys start with that, and then we'll move on from that, with our discussion, and then invite anybody that wants to speak on this as well, okay?
Thank you. President Gregoire, members of the board, Dr. Weitenheimer. We appreciate the opportunity to gather your feedback regarding the student rights and responsibilities. We appreciate the opportunity for you to have given us feedback at the other board meeting previously, and Ms. O'Brien has also forwarded us some questions, and so we're happy to address those questions here. You also have a new publication in front of you, which is the Student Rights and Responsibilities Handbook, where all the proposed changes have been removed to give you a better sense of what the book would look like as it was recommended the other night. Jean Copen is joining me this evening here. Jean has taken a leadership role with the SR&R committee and this handbook, and she has Ms. O'Brien's questions. We'd like to address those now.
Can we have the questions? I thought we were going to get them ahead of time as the board.
I understand yours.
Yeah, Ms. Ordway had asked.
We just question and then answer. Write it down. Go ahead, Dan.
Good evening. So I was just planning on reading the question and then going down. Is that okay for everybody?
For me.
Okay. So the first question actually referred to page 4, paragraph 4. And the question was, why is the use of personal electronic devices prohibited on buses? The district issues iPads to high school students for academic use. Are these devices treated differently than personal devices? Students, especially athletes, must use time on the bus to study or complete homework. So we needed some clarification there, and we did consult with our director of transportation, and we added in some clarifying statements because that was a very good suggestion about needing some clarification, especially for the athletes. So the reason for the restriction while kids are being transported home to and from school is because the bus driver is the only supervisor on that bus, and sometimes students are being inappropriate with their devices, and we have no way of stopping that while the vehicle's moving. We were also a little fearful of kids holding their devices and the stopping and starting of the bus, and phones go flying, and things like that. We did add some clarifying information in there for athletes because they are permitted to use that for homework and things like that because the coach is an additional supervisor on the bus. So the new language is added to that. Any questions about that first one?
Actually, I don't see it on page 4.
was
Is
it what
on the
pa-
new page?
What page is it?
On this new book?
Discipline procedures, children online.
Oh, and I apologize because that could have been a reference. It was under
Original.
Yeah. Under bus discipline procedures, maybe?
It was. I'm sorry because I'm referring to the question. It said page 4, paragraph 4, but I'm looking. It should have been under bus. Thank you. Page 12.
Page 12?
Okay.
2 or 12?
Electronic devices. and
Actually, I think it was under buses.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Isn't it under bus discipline?
Bus.
Page 2. Yes, and I'm kind of overflowing to page 3. Sorry, you have we wanted to give you a cleaned up version so you didn't have to look at all the yellow highlights and strike
It's on
throughs.
page 3.
Yes.
What is the third full paragraph?
Mm-hmm.
I would even go farther. If we're using just athletic events, I would just say as long as there's supervision, because it could be a music concert. There's a lot of band kids that do homework on it.
Oh, yeah.
So,
Right there, and you're right, other extracurricular
As long
activities.
as there's an
like,
aide or somebody that can
Right.
supervise, it's okay. But,
Just change it to when there's.
In
when-
addition to the bus driver, there's another certified
Yeah.
adult.
and,
Okay.
okay.
Do you
And
want-
just
Don't put
wordsmith it
certified
that way,
though,
yeah.
because
Not
what if you have
certified.
bus aides?
yeah,
They're not
not
necessarily
certified, just
certified.
well, they're
at
certified
least
to
one
be on-
adult on there.
Yeah.
Is what they have currently.
Okay.
Thank you for clarifying that. That was perplexing to me.
And standing up for the band kids.
Music. Choir takes it too.
Okay, go ahead.
The second question, and I apologize again because these were the old page numbers, page 4, paragraph 7, and this is also, let's see what this is referring to, bus discipline as well. So it's in the same area there. It's the last sentence, and the question was, is there an administrative review process to ensure procedures were followed when discipline occurs due to an incident on the bus? We are going to be adding the statement, if a parent disagrees with bus discipline, they are instructed to contact the transportation director for an administrative review to ensure that policies and procedures were followed.
And that will be added to
Yes.
So the process will be added to that paragraph?
Yes, and then the transportation piece is also on our fast answers document as well. So when there's actually a transportation section on that document.
Okay.
How many questions are there? Because I mean, they don't sound like questions, they more sound like pre-discussion, because I have notes throughout the book for discussion. Are we going to discuss it or just answer questions?
Well,
I guess because that's what I'm just asking, because I need to know whether I chime in now or
well,
wait.
when she's done with the questions, you can chime in and we can have those discussions. Right now, we instructed them.
Well, no, I'm just asking,
Okay,
Mike.
okay.
I'm just asking.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, the third question referred to some of our technology information. This referred to page 5.3 last sentence, but I'm sure that's not what's in your book. But it was basically referring to how do we ensure third-party websites do not use student information for commercial purposes. So it's stated, actually, if you're on page right under the transportation section.
It's here.
I'm not looking at that one. I have all my notes in this one.
Children online privacy? Act,
Children
is that where
online
it is?
privacy, yes.
The children's on, yes.
So that's page 3.
And that's
So, with software programs, so if the paragraph's read, it's referring to when children go to software programs and they ask them for their first and last name and a password and things, so that when the child logs in back to the software program, that it's personalized for their learning. When we purchase these software programs, there are agreements that you've often seen those screens that say click agree, and they're guaranteeing us that that's not going to happen as part of the contractual agreement and for the payment.
okay, and I understand that, but do we ever inspect what we expect from them?
President Gregoire, Mrs. O'Brien, could just, I'm sorry, just a little more.
Well, I understand
information.
that it's part of the agreement, but who's checking? Are there any spot checks, any audits to ensure that they are indeed not sharing that information, or that they're following their agreement? I don't. That's kind of what I was curious about.
And on with what Ms. O'Brien's saying, you know, if because I've had this conversation with Jim before on the Register My Athlete. If one of our coaches decides they're going to use Register My Athlete, this is violated, because it will ask and it will so you know, along with what she said, what controls do we have in place to make sure that we're not putting our students' information out there? Do we have controls in place?
I do not have those answers for you tonight. I'll have to find those out through IS&T.
Thank you very much. I appreciate
Actually, and there's this magic word called proxy, where if somebody knows anything about web, you can go through a proxy server and do an end around.
No, that'd be Jeff Anderson's.
So anyway, just it hasn't. See, anyway.
Was that all the questions?
No, there's
Okay.
I was just waiting, sorry. Referring to, this question was, what occurs if the administrative review reveals procedures were not followed when issuing discipline? So if an administrative review shows that procedures were not followed, and I'm thinking that this question is referring to like due process not being followed.
Did I say what page that's from?
Yeah, but now it's page 11, paragraph 2 and 3, but I'm not sure which one that is in the new book. Let's see, because is mine the new or the old?
So it's under student due process.
It's under due process,
Okay.
paragraph 2 and 3.
So
So
if
I
an
had it
administrative
circled- I have
review
it
showed
circled
that
as well.
processes were not followed, a couple things would happen. And this is very hypothetical because it's a case-by-case basis, but the consequences would be reviewed. And if warranted, we would be changing that to reflect a more appropriate consequence. That could range from everything from the actual, if there was a suspension days or whatever, we would be adjusting those. And in some cases, we might even be under further review, changing the title of the infraction. After reviewing the situation, we would choose an infraction definition that best met the behavior. Additionally, students' discipline file would be updated to reflect the outcome of that review. And administration would experience some retraining on district-approved procedures.
Okay.
I'll have to
Well,
process that.
since, because I mean, I have notes all the way through the book, but since I do have that area circled and noted and multiple noted, I started with the paragraph just before it where it says, it ends with guilty, the consequence of suspension imposed for the period of time. As I started reading through this, in my notes, what I asked is, where's the parent in this? It's, the parent's not in here. It says, I don't understand what we're doing to our kids when over and over again the measure is, you're out. I circled the second paragraph and I said, why? I looked at because we need to look at that. Should we review that policy? If suspension is our primary tool, what path do the parents have? If you suspend my kid for 5 days and it's going to take me 10 days to get through the appeal process, seriously, my kid just spent 5 days, and then even 10 days, 8 days later, you say, well, that probably was not the appropriate punishment. My kid still spent the 5 days. So as I was looking in this area, that's kind of what I noted. In fact, throughout the book, the main thing I see missing is parent communication and parent co-working with and teamwork with the parent. And we're not a penal institution. We're a school district. And these parents are our partners, and I don't see them in here anywhere. Am I missing it? Because if I am, please, someone tell me. Did you guys not read it that way, or?
Sorry, I was still thinking a little bit back to the other stuff. I guess to answer that question, Mrs. Fisher, when I look at the chart, wherever that is in the book, and I did like that it's very much now noted that they're recommended. It's not a black and white punishment, although I had been told that before these changes in dealing just with my own children at the school. I'm happy to see that it is stated that it's recommended, and that a principal or assistant principal does not have to follow those procedures. There happened to be a particular instance that I am familiar with, and it involved my child. And I asked had he retaliated against the child who instigated and he'd thrown a punch, what would the punishment have been? Because I did not like the punishment the other child was getting. And the assistant principal at that time expressed to me that, these were all the things she looked at, and that although fighting was, I think, is a recommended minimum 3-day suspension, she expressed to me that she would probably give a detention given my son's record at that time. Now, I realize that was a what-if scenario, but I like to believe in the
But
fact that
here's-
our assistant
here's the
principals
only-
and principals
but
are
here's
doing
the
that.
problem with that, is we had an instance this year where we did have a student who did throw a punch because they were defending a student being bullied, and the bully hit them, and they responded, and that was not the case. So my concern is the two scenarios, your son or daughter or whatever would have been maybe given detention. This one would have been given a 5-day suspension. So, I mean, we're setting, number one, if it's a minimum, why are we setting a minimum? Why are we even saying a possible minimum if it's not a minimum? Why aren't we saying this is the max? And then giving our administrators true discretion, unless the minimum has to be set. You know, the other night I said, 57% of the time we either suspend or expel. Now, the ones that are expel, they need to be expelled because they're generally crimes. The minimum is an expulsion because they're crimes.
Wait, where does the 57% come from?
And what,
Because there's 72 infractions.
we haven't
Okay.
That's
had
what I'm
an
saying.
expulsion in our district in how long?
I actually pulled some statistics because I realized
I mean,
that came up at
we
the
have
board meeting.
long-term
We've
suspensions, but we
Right.
haven't had
No, I'm going,
expulsions.
but we're not going off of that. We're going off of what's written here, and that's what I'm saying, is that what's written here is that we're setting a minimum, and as a minimum, there's 42 instances where the minimum is either suspension or expulsion. 42
in
of
the
them.
book. I thought you were
Yes.
talking about
not
specific
saying
incidences
no,
this
no, no,
year.
no, no.
Yeah,
Sorry, I thought you were
that
talking
wasn't
about
clear.
kids.
Okay.
No, I'm talking, no, we're going over the book. I'm not talking,
Okay.
in the book, there are 72 listed infractions.
But other than the,
7% is suspension
but
or
other than
expulsion.
statutory or legal, this book, I think, says that the administrators have the ability to customize to the individual student. They're not bound by something unless it's a legal binding. So I could say, well, 100% of them are going to be able to do whatever. I mean, I don't know what a situation is. You can have student,
That's my question. Why are we putting the minimum in anyways then?
well,
The maximum I can see, but why are we putting a minimum in anyways if they have discretion?
Well, I think the minimum's there for a guideline.
yeah.
You
I
don't
do
have some principals don't know or what they should do on a certain situation, where, and by putting a minimum there, they're saying, okay, that's where the district is looking at. That's where we should probably be. Then they can make the decision, well, this kid was framed or, or whatever, and do, but I'm just saying, they have, the minimum there is kind of a guideline or a baseline for them to look at.
There's one big, really, really big hole in that argument, and that is simply that if we truly have that many administrators that don't know what is even remotely reasonable, they're going to look at that minimum. If you're saying that our administrators are truly that clueless, then they're going to go, yep, this is the minimum, you're getting suspended.
Well-
Honestly, I don't believe, either we have well-trained administrators who can make a reasonable judgment, or we don't.
Well, again, you're looking at the audience here is also the kids too. They need to understand too that there's a consequence. And if you don't have any minimum, sometimes they may, hey, there's no consequence here. So you need to kind of lay down and say, hey, there is a consequence. And we're using these as recommendations anyway, as you know. But-
Michael, can I ask a question?
Sure.
Dan, I think this would go to you. So with your group of administrators that are responsible for deciding what the reaction to an action a child has made, AKA the consequence, how many of your administrators truly have no clue of what an individual need would be? I mean, do they have to look at a board and go, well, let's see, it says, I mean, do they not have a relationship before this? and the part about not involving the parent, I know there are one-time things where something might happen and it never happened before and it'll never happen again. But when you're talking about kids that may have difficulties a lot, we do have communication with parents and with students, and I'm just trying to understand if this truly is, we put this down because our administrators have no clue what to do.
President Gregoire, Ms. Ordway, our administrators are very experienced in working with discipline. That's part of the training that they receive. And so they're quite adept at determining each individual situation and trying to make the best decision, which is in the best interest of that student and those students who are involved in the incident. Most of our administrators currently do, I believe, use discretion when it comes to these incidences, and they consider lots of different variables that may influence a particular behavior. I don't think that many of our administrators, if any, use this book as a non-negotiable have to. I think it serves as a guideline for them so that there is an element of systematic process and some element of assuring that they are considering what's important in a particular situation regarding a minimum and maximum consequence. It's merely a guideline, and that's all the SR&R book is intended to do. And we use training opportunities in our meetings with principals, both individually as well as group meetings with them, to talk about how to think about situations and determine appropriate consequences.
And I have one more question, Michael. Were you done? Because I have one more question.
Certainly.
So with that, do your principals or administrators, because some of you guys are TOAs or whomever it is, do you share, have feedback, debrief on certain situations to be able to share how this worked, how that worked? I went to a conference, I learned this. Do we have that kind of communication amongst them without it being like the formal meetings?
President Gregoire, Ms. Ordway, we certainly do that. Many of our administrators, first of all, are in constant communication with our department as they encounter behavioral situations that have unique circumstances. They'll be in contact with us and use us as a sounding board to share their thinking with us in order that we can help them come to an appropriate level of consequence with that. More formally, as you mentioned, about 6-7 times a year, within our principal level meetings, we devote 30 minutes of each of those meetings for student safety issues for which elements of the student rights and responsibilities are typically part of that meeting, so that we can further have discussion and consider unique situations that happen at different campuses and how you might approach them.
And I got one more question, I promise. I'm trying to. Okay, so with all that information, do we go back over what these consequences were given to the different students to see what really did work and what didn't? Is this really helping with changing the behavior, or was this just plain, they looked at it, it was punitive and it had nothing but for the moment effect? Or are we looking to see how these, what the outcome is, or what the outcomes are, so we can have best practices and then still do the individual student?
Right. Yeah. President Gregoire, Ms. Ordway, I believe we do that. And one of the ways that we do that is through our MTSS behavioral interventions and PBIS work that we do across our campuses. Most of those strategies that we use across the campuses are response to student behavior. And so we look at behavior as an opportunity to change behavior. And so we look at both preventions and interventions in dealing with that. And our programs of PBIS and MTSSB are strong within our campuses. In fact, we just had a training for all 38 campuses this past week on that very topic. Those trainings are intended to provide additional support and resources to both our school teams and principals in order to support behavioral decisions on the campus, if that answers your question.
Yeah, and could you just give the full meaning to the acronyms for the MTSS and the PBIS, just so we have it down, what that means?
Positive behavioral intervention supports is PBIS, and then multi-tiered system of supports behavior.
I knew the answer. I
Yeah.
just wanted everyone else to know.
Thank you.
And thank you.
Okay. So,
Well, I would like to know what the public thinks, because honestly, it all sounds good when we say we're doing this and we say we're doing that, but as a parent, it is not the experience. And most parents that have ever brought anything relating to discipline, it's not the case. It's the case of this book is a tool because that principal is peeved at me, and that's what you have as the minimum, so my kid got the book thrown at him. I don't see that. I think having that minimum removes any potential collaboration. The one thing I have looked through the whole book, and the thing that's missing is the parent and the collaboration and the child and keeping the child. Child ditches, guess what? They want to go home. They want to be suspended. You're rewarding them by suspending them. They ditched. I don't want to be at school. I'm a ditcher. I want to go and play Xbox and eat Twinkies on my couch. So by all means, have at it. Send me home. We have no alternative. 42 times we throw them away as a minimum.
Can I ask a
Am I
question
the
about?
only one
wait,
that bothers?
can I ask a question though first, because I went back and counted a couple of the things you were talking about. Can I ask a question,
Yes.
Mike?
go ahead. Yeah, this is informal, so you can
Yes.
just chime in.
Okay, I just want to make sure. So as I looked through the ones that have the minimum as a suspension, whether it's 1 day or a long-term suspension or expulsion, many of them have state statutes associated with them. In any of those instances, do you know, and if you don't know tonight, that's fine, if those minimum punishments, are they related to the state statute in any way? Or, because when I went back and counted, 21 of those 37 infractions have a state statute in the box. So I think in those instances, if those are related to state statute, that's not. I mean, that's what it needs to be.
Well, the statute is defining them, I believe. We have a
Or do you know?
citizen that
first, or-
wants to talk.
Go
Doesn't matter, it's a study session.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
He has to go to the.
We have to hear you, Paul Strauss.
Try not to use my teacher voice then.
Just say your name into the microphone.
Paul
Okay,
Strauss.
Paul Strauss, 8th grade science teacher. With Mrs. Fisher, with what you were saying about having the minimum, I know from a secondary standpoint, I deal with older kids, they go through the student rights and responsibility and look at that chart. And by seeing a minimum in there, it actually starts making it more real to them, to where they could see, wow, if I do this, this is the minimum that's going to happen to me, and I don't even like that. Whereas if it's just more of, okay, it can go up to this, a lot of it doesn't really hit reality to them yet.
I disagree. This isn't a prison.
Well, no, I'm
This
just
is
saying
a school. Are we trying to teach them behaviors, appropriate behaviors and positive behaviors? Or are we trying to make sure that they comply or we throw their butts out?
But I think that,
Well, can we let Mr. Strauss
I'm
finish
sorry,
first?
Paul, I didn't know you
Are
were
you
done. I'm
were you
sorry.
done?
That's just been my experience dealing with 8th graders, where they notice that, and where if it's more general, they know that, sometimes, well, if I can just go talk to the principal and
I've
talk
never
my
known
way
an
out
eighth
of it.
grader that would read this. Do you guys review it in class?
Oh, yeah.
Actually read
Yep.
it in
Yeah, they
class?
Yep.
My kids have never had it read with them.
I think it goes from class to class.
So the few classes that do read it with their thing, that's wonderful, and that is great that they would have that. But if it's not consistent through the district, I've 3 kids through the district, and they've never,
Go ahead.
in fact, most parents don't even read this until their kid gets in trouble, and then they pull the book and go, oh, holy smoke, what is it?
Okay, go ahead, Jenny.
Jenny Frank, do you need any more information? Okay. Well, I'd like to speak to Ms. Fisher's concern about suspension, and I think you said it was in how many times in the board book?
Well, it's 42, and some of them are.
42 times, and the concern
That's
that you express of kids misbehaving, being suspended, and then being sent home, which was likely their goal to begin with. And I'd just like to share an experience I had as a parent with my oldest son. who graduated from Deer Valley High in 2009. In elementary school and middle school, he was a big behavior problem, extremely bright and a big behavior problem, and he learned very quickly that if he misbehaved, he would be sent home. And he was suspended multiple times from numerous different schools and landed in Deer Valley. And again, his behaviors caused him to be suspended, which was exactly what he wanted, until he was sent to the ACEs, where they don't suspend people, and you stay there until you get your work done. And it took him all of about 2 weeks at the ACEs to figure out that wasn't going to work anymore. And I'm happy to say that as a result of that experience, he graduated in the top 15% of his class at Deer Valley High and recently graduated with a degree in manufacturing engineering from University ASU and is gainfully employed. So I think my point is, not to make a long story even longer, is that it might be worth looking at, is suspension all we can do with some of these kids? And is it effective? Because it was never effective with my son. So that's all I have to share.
Go ahead.
Rich Keene, Vista Peak. When I've worked with 5 principals in the district, I was expected by 4 of them to cover this material under the social studies guidelines. So we did cover it. I can assure you it's not done everywhere. I can assure you that the only kid in my 8th grade class who knew what was in that book was my son. And he knew that because I taught it. So no, the kids they don't spend a lot of time looking at this in most cases. And now being at Vista Peak, I can assure you of that because I'm now doing that with the induction students at Vista Peak. The problem I have with putting the minimum in and then giving principals the leeway, I think the leeway is, principal discretion is the best choice. The minimums should come out because what you're saying with the minimum is, this is what's going to happen to you. And then when it happens to student A and doesn't happen to student B because of discretion, you've now created an environment of animosity. So I would prefer principal's discretion because that gives you the freedom to look at alternatives. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Althea Allen. I'm a parent in the district. I guess we just kind of took the liberty to go with public comment. Thank you for listening to us. A couple things concern me just about what I've heard thus far in the discussion. What I would encourage you to do as governing board members and leaders is to, instead of rely on some hypotheticals or instead of looking at the number of times suspension appears as a possibility in the handbook, please take the time to examine the real data in this district. In 2011, the U.S. Department of Education and the U.S. Department of Justice announced the Supportive School Discipline Initiative. And that was in an effort to reform our school discipline practices across this country. And it was in direct response to the alarming rate of exclusionary discipline practices, out of school suspension, expulsion, that we use every single day in our schools. I would encourage you as board members to not only look at your data in this district, but to look to the research. There is not research that exists that will tell you out-of-school suspension works, especially for kids who struggle. There is not research to support that. There are, as a result of this initiative, many school boards across this country that have banned the use of out-of-school suspensions for minor disciplinary infractions. So I get it. As a parent, as an educator, as a leader in this community, there are times where we have to give a student a timeout. I think the public would assume that that's the majority of the time. If you look at your data, that is not the truth. I pulled one elementary school to look at the data from 14-15. In 14-15, in this K-8 school in your district, there were 32 out-of-school suspensions. Not a big number. Not that bad, right? But if you dive into that data, and I think most people would assume 32, not bad, given probably the large enrollment, and they're probably for things that are really awful. 20 of those students were in grades K through 4. Every single child of those 20, 100%, were little boys. So either little girls don't misbehave in K through 4 or we treat them differently. And the Office of Civil Rights has a problem with that. So please look at your data. Every offense of those 20 suspensions were for language and disruption. 12 of the out-of-school suspensions were actually in grades 6 through 8. And again, you think those older students, they must have done something pretty bad. Every single one of those, only 3 were girls, but every single one of those were for language, with the exception of 1 theft and 1 disruption. So as governing board members, you are legislatively, statutorily required to review out-of-school suspensions on a weekly basis. My question is, I have to wonder how often you are really doing that and how often you are really peeling back the layers. Because if you are, you're sending a message to this community that exclusionary practices are not only alive and well here, but that you support them. And my expectations as a parent and as a voter and as an educational leader is that you, the elected officials, are engaged, are well-informed, and that you're consistently making sure your policies are aligned to the values and beliefs that you tout in your strategic plan. If you roll up your sleeves and you do that very difficult work that is required of leaders, you have the courageous conversations about what you value as a governing body, not as an individual, and you can articulate what you want your schools to be like for our children. If you do that, and at the end of the day, you still believe, after looking at the data and the research, that exclusionary practices work, and that you truly do not believe every learner is that some kids are disposable, and if you come to decide that adult-centered campuses are what you want as opposed to student-centered, then I would ask you to courageously change your mission, values, and beliefs. Be honest with us so that we can make other choices for our children.
Okay, go ahead, Matt.
Hi, Matt Haria, Assistant Principal, Boulder Creek High School. Not only that, but I do have 2 children also at Diamond Canyon Elementary School, kindergartner and a 6th grader. I want to address a couple of the questions that Mrs. Fisher had in regards to suspensions, in addition to what we're looking at as far as data. I do want to say that I know I can't speak for all campuses, but at Boulder Creek at the beginning of the school year, not only do we give a sheet to all parents to sign acknowledging that they have received a copy of the Students' Rights and Responsibilities Handbook, and in fact every hearing that we appear at for a long-term suspension, that's one of the questions that's asked immediately at the beginning of the script. But we also give a quiz in which we go over the Rights and Responsibilities Handbook for the students, and we quiz them and make sure that they understand what that's about. In addition to that, this year Boulder Creek has gone into their in-school suspension program and tried to have some more restorative practices, talking about what they can do to change their behaviors and what things we can do to instruct them on strategies that they can use as the student. In addition to that, we have them every single time they are assigned in-school suspension read the Responsibilities Handbook and take that same quiz over again. We've also instituted Health 101 magazine, which is an online magazine dealt directly to the social emotional behaviors for students. And I can tell you that just from the experience that I've had in this district, that we as an administrative team, whenever we're dealing with big issues, we're conferencing with each other because in the end it is about those restorative practices. PBIS was brought to Boulder Creek High School. We were one of the first high schools in the district to embark on that type of positive behavior intervention supports. The second year that I was in the district, I sat on as the chair of the committee for PBIS. And one of the goals of PBIS is addressing the very nature of what was addressed, as one of the parents had spoken, about looking at minor infractions and not looking at suspensions out of school for minor infractions. We do analyze our data, and in fact this year we are a pilot school looking at use of power schools for teachers to input minor infractions in the power school program so that we can pull that data and analyze whether or not minor infractions are truly the way they're being handled in the classroom are deterring students from causing that same behavior. As far as students looking at those behaviors, I can tell you this is my fourth district that I have been a part of, or third as an administrator that I've been a part of, and I will say that students do pay attention to those minimums. For example, with fighting, I know that there are those hypothetical situations in which we talk about what constitutes a fight, what is self-defense, what is self-offense, so to speak. And in instances that I've been associated with, again, we're taking all matters into consideration. And as an administrative team with all the assistant principals, we talk about those situations and determine what's in the best interest of the student. As far as truancy is concerned, keep in mind that when it does say suspension, that does not necessarily mean out-of-school suspension. One of the things we at Boulder Creek have really taken pride in is when they are truant or skipping class. There is a difference between skipping one period and skipping all day, and that appropriate discipline is matches what that crime is. And in this case, when they do skip an entire day of school, it's an in-school suspension, not an out-of-school, because you're correct. If that's what they want is to stay home, that's not what we look to do, is to keep them home. In addition to that, we do have in the SR&R handbook the CUTS program with the truancy. If they are under the age of 16, which is statutory, that we do refer them to the CUTS program. So I can say that this is the first district that I have been a part of where the SR&R is so complete, and as detailed as it is, it's not perfect by any means. And you know, I would say I wish we had a perfect document, but everything is situational. I would say that having those minimum requirements, especially when you have new administrators, even though when we were well trained, I came into this district with 5 years experience as an administrator, but Deer Valley policies are different and situational as opposed to some of the policies I came from in Ohio. So having minimums, it allows me to have a guideline in which to have a starting point and to go down or up based on the situation that's presented. So just kind of as an overview, just please keep in mind that suspension doesn't necessarily mean that we're kicking them out of school. I can think of this year alone, we've had 3 major fights on our campus, and I think that's a testament when you have 2,600 students that are interacting close quarters on a regular day basis. That's a testament to what the guidelines are set in place for, is to deter those types of incidences from happening. Thank you.
Go ahead,
Whoever wants to address this. As district leaders, as campus leaders, it's going to sound like a stupid question because I think, of course, we know the answer, but I'm going to ask it. We do realize that for every day a kid is out of school, it puts them further behind. We just attended our first part of our equity conference today, and so suspension, out of school suspension, or even in school suspension that's staring at a wall would not be something, or would it be, how do we address that fact that when there is the need for someone to be taken out of the atmosphere that they normally would be in, how do we utilize that time?
President Gregoire, Ms. Ordway, Matt Hurria mentioned PBIS, and one of the goals of PBIS, ultimate goals, is to reduce out-of-school time for discipline. We have schools that have actually statistics that are pretty amazing for the year, resulting in between 1 to 3 for over 500 kids at the school, and they have reduced from hundreds through PBIS. One of the things PBIS stresses is coming up with alternatives to suspending children off campus. This could include everything from, like Matt mentioned, to in-school suspension, what we would call in-school suspension. That's more of a high school term. For the little ones, we call buddy rooms, where they'll spend a day with another teacher. Often, if they're a 4th grade student, they've been at the school, they have kinder, 1st and 2nd grade teachers they know, they'll spend the day with them to build a relationship. PBIS is huge on relationship building, preventative measures, using everything you know how to prevent things from happening. But I do think when we start to talk about, and that is 90% of our effort, but things do happen. And I think our administrators have to balance the consequences also with the victim's expectations of protection. And that's one thing that we haven't talked about. When a child experiences something at school and there's an offender and a victim, the victim's families come in and demand of us that we uphold some kind of discipline. They often, as expected, will tell the administrator, I want him out of here, get him out of here. And they're very in protective mother bear mode, and they want their child protected. An administrator has to balance those expectations with knowing that we deal with children and that we don't want out-of-school suspension. But depending on the infraction, sometimes out-of-school suspension is the consequence that needs to be chosen. There are cool-down periods that need to happen. Victims need to see that I will be protected under this SR&R. Parents are signing off on this, saying that if something happens to my child, I trust the administration will address it appropriately. One of the things that PBIS also demands is that there are teams on each campus that address, they meet monthly to look at data, school statistics. Like I said, they're looking at trying to reduce any punitive discipline, and that could range everything from classroom consequences to suspension. And so those are going on as well. All of that is really our emphasis. When we come together with administrators, we just had a full-day conference with 160 attendees, 3 to 4 people from each campus who are part of those individual teams. They learned everything from how to intervene. We do tiered interventions, everything we can think of. Tier 1 is prevention, teaching, reteaching, procedures, predicting where things are going to happen and stopping trouble before it happens. Tier 2 is individual behavior plans, parent conferences, one-to-one check-ins with kids daily. Tier 3 is an individualized plan for the child. So we have tiered interventions going on the campus. All of this effort and measure is to prevent something from happening.
Why isn't any of that in this book? Because if that is our desire, is to do what you say and to put, we have these alternatives where, we have in here for horseplay a suspension. So roughhousing, a suspension. So why would that be a minimum suspension? Why wouldn't that be exactly what you just said? Why would our minimum be that? And one of the issues I have with, one of the things that we learned, and they even talked about it today in the conference that we were at, in our equity conference, is what are you teaching these children? Are we trying to teach these children appropriate behaviors? Is our discipline intended to modify the student's behavior? Because, and I'm hearing that there's inconsistency with communication of this book to the student, but even if we had 100% of our students are going through this book and they're reviewing this book, the minimums that we currently have in there, they don't tell our children that we want to build them, that we want to retain them, that we want to work with them, that we want behavior modification. We're expecting excellence from them. what this book says to them is, I'm going to throw you out. Don't do it. As a minimum, whether we like it or not, whether we say, well, that in suspension could be it could be this, it could be this. What this says is the opposite. Alfie?
Oh.
I'm sorry, she raised her hand. I shouldn't have.
And I would say, I would caution you that I believe when you put a minimum for something like horseplay, for example, as a suspension, even though there's flexibility and latitude, you are giving parents of victims the power to come in and to say, it says in your book suspension, and although we can't discuss what we've done with another child, I would expect the person who did, roughhouse with my kid is out. When we put a minimum for something like that is truly a restorative practice, and PBIS is a great restorative program. If you truly understand restorative justice, if a minimum is a conversation and a conference, you have the flexibility of two kids were horseplaying, and you're educating your community that our obligation as educators are to bring those children together and to restore faith in one another and to restore and make things right as a minimum, as opposed to one will automatically miss a day of instruction.
Okay, well, I'm going to ask you a point-blank question. Would you say I want to ask because you're very articulate here. Should there be a minimum if somebody brings the gun to school?
That's statutorily required. It's
Right.
you have
Okay,
to.
that's why I'm
yes.
just saying
Absolutely.
because the
Absolutely.
kids need to
ones that are
understand.
required
But it's
should, yeah.
statutorily required. But see, this is a book that's going to our kids, and the kids don't read statute; they read this, and that's
Oh,
why we should put
absolutely.
that in there.
So why
So
can't we put that in those?
Okay, sorry, excuse, can I?
So I'm just anything, just the hardcore ones
For
where
the major offenses,
Okay.
absolutely.
Okay, so there's a happy medium here where maybe we should put minimums on some and maybe not on the others.
And I would also say that, again, I mean, I'm appealing to you as a parent, but also as an educational leader. I look to my governing board for direction and
Okay.
for guidance as a
No,
leader.
and again, I just wanted to know where you were there. So I agree with you. I agree with you.
If you agree as a board that exclusionary practices for minor offenses aren't okay, you've also got to align your budget. Because if you don't provide school districts with schools with resources to have alternatives to suspension, their hands are somewhat tied,
Yeah. Well,
right?
and
They
go
have
ahead.
nowhere to put the kid.
Okay, well, thank you so much.
Thank you. As Mrs. Ordway and Mrs. Fisher have both alluded to the fact that the three of us were at the first day of a 2-day equity symposium today. And I think, were you still there for the panel discussion that happened this afternoon, Mrs. Fisher, with the three school
Which time was
districts
it?
later in the afternoon?
It was after 3, no, I had to go
Okay.
to work and sign
So
checks.
this afternoon, there were 3 school districts that have made this part of their mission, vision, strategic plan, for I guess lack of a better term, and one of the governing board members, Ann Greenberg from Paradise Valley School District, specifically spoke to the fact that in the years they've been talking about this, she's here and she wants everybody to move quicker, faster, hurry, take bigger steps, and get to where she wants to be in this equity situation. And her superintendent, Dr. Lee, was sitting next to her and smiling and saying, that's great, but it's a culture. It's a culture change. And I'm not saying we're not doing this. I'm saying that it's in our classrooms, it's in different stages. We haven't maybe communicated it out to all of our parents. I know that, when I went to school, if you got in trouble at home, you got in more trouble, or if you got in trouble at school, you got in more trouble at home. That's not always the case today. So things are evolving and changing, and we are, I think, a student-centered governing board. We don't always agree on everything, but I think that we are starting to have this discussion, and I think, Mrs. Fisher, because you've been more involved with this, you went to the equity thing last year, you have some experiences maybe you're our Mrs. Greenberg from Paradise Valley, and it's not that we don't want to catch up. I think that we've got to take some steps. So we need more data. Right, I understand, and I think we need some data about what's going on in our school district. I think the Students' Rights and Responsibility book, it's made some improvements. I think Mr. Gregoire has made a great point. Maybe we need to evaluate which ones we can have minimums with, which ones we don't have to have minimums with. I'd like for, maybe the committee could look at that, Dr. Weitenheimer. But I think we need to have some time, because like my questions that you didn't have, we didn't have all of your concerns, so I didn't have time to wrap my mind around the different things you were going to talk about tonight. And I think we need a plan on how we're going to attack this. This is like an elephant, and we need to do it one bite at a time, and we have 1 hour and 10 minutes to go through a much more on our agenda. So it's not that I don't want to have this discussion, but we need to decide, I think, how we're going to eat the elephant.
And I agree, and that's one of the things. I'm not asking that we fix it. We are not going to fix what is this, a 90-page book? We are not going to fix this mini novel that we expect someone to read in one meeting. I really very much regret that we're doing it after the committee has done so much work. We should have had this last September, and I wish we would have. We didn't. For whatever reasons, we didn't. I guess what I'm looking for, I know we're not going to fix it 100%, and I know how hard this committee works and how hard you work. I'm just asking that we take a reasonable look at where we're at here and maybe just make at least a step, because when I read through this book, and I did go back after I had asked the questions, and I went back and I looked for positive throughout the book, and I trimmed my notes down, but when I got to the end, I realized I still had wrote all over it. And I saw so much negativity and so much the message we're sending. And I don't think that as a district we want to send that message. That's what I'm looking for, is that we trim it down. So
Okay.
could we do that type of review?
Could we have, or could you send us all of your notes so that
Absolutely.
we could
I
read
will.
through that, and rather than,
Can I just have you scan this and
or
send it?
Dr. V, can you help us out here?
So again,
I mean, my thought as a first step would be to ask Jean and Dan and the committee to review the minimum recommendations reflective of tonight's conversation. There's
Do you want me to scan my notes and you can give it to them and to the board? These are just my notes. You guys could read my
Right,
notes
I-
and go
right,
here at
and
full.
you know, my guess is that notes that you made, there'd be somebody else on the board that may not agree with your notes.
I was
Right.
hoping
So
that you would
direction.
have those notes ready for them before, and so they could have.
So direction for the committee, I think, would be the most helpful. So if in my listening was good, the minimum consequences, particularly those that are not articulated in law, that we review the minimum consequence for what it says, either that it be examined perhaps to change, or that the committee would make a recommendation back to you about whether some of these would have minimums and maximums and some of these would not. But I would like to be able to give that specific kind of direction. We should highlight the PBIS effort, the training effort. It should be highlighted in here because it is unlike many other districts, far beyond many other districts. And quite honestly, this draft is far beyond other districts around us
Absolutely.
that we are familiar with in terms of its effort.
Right.
So let's give the committee that opportunity to take the elephant and take a big old bite.
So they'll look at the minimum, maximum, and you will also add the PBIS MTSS portion?
That would be my recommendation,
Please.
because what Ms. Fisher is saying is accentuate the positive.
Right.
To be sure we communicate the positive.
So if we start with those two steps, then maybe what could happen is we could review it again.
Well, again, they have to have this
But
published.
that's why I want to know
so-
our
Oh, no, it has to be
timeframe.
published.
I would like to have Ms. Fisher's notes, because I do
Okay, and
think
then
it
we
would
could
be
also
great to
look at your
scan them. We'll
notes.
get them so that everybody can see what that thinking is. I
We
think
did say
that's a
this
good
is-
thing.
Okay.
Huge elephant, and we can't change it all in 1 year. And again, a lot of this stuff,
And feel free to send me a
a
note
lot
saying
of this
this is a
stuff
BS
is something
note.
that
I'm
has
good
to
with
be
that,
implemented
'cause
on
maybe I
their
didn't
end.
get it.
So, you can't just throw out and say, okay, now
Oh, no, no.
they're gonna have to stand on their head and spit nickels before everything. You
I
can't.
doubt any of my notes
When
say
does it
anything
have to
about
be
spitting
approved?
No, but
by?
I'm just saying, let's.
Do we have a
the
time
two items
frame?
we talked about,
Do we have a time
We have a
frame?
time.
I'm sorry.
The deadline for
the
approval.
timeline that we had was, let's see, we are March the 10th. Our next board meeting is April the 12th. We had targeted April the 12th as board approval, so they can go to print and all of those things.
Well, there's 2
That
weeks.
was our target. That's the new target. That was not the old target. The old
Gotta
target was
keep in
sooner
mind
than
they
that.
also have a week of spring break.
Correct.
that's next week, so,
No, that's week after next.
Yeah.
Mine's next week.
okay. Okay, so direction, reevaluate the minimums and highlight the PBIS.
PBIS and the positive, and I think I also heard the parental component of that. Where the parent
parents are
role,
missing.
the parent
And
Well,
and
that-
hand holding.
Well, that would be included in the PBIS and the MTS as the parental portion and how we deal with that. And I don't want to pick on words, but I don't think that we're looking to fix this. I think we're looking at making it as best as it can be,
Right.
because your work gave us the opportunity to find out what else we needed to do, right?
right.
So I'm not looking at fixing your work, I'm looking at adding to.
And then
Do it.
you're going to provide Mrs. Fisher your notes to Kim to send out to
Can I
us.
just scan it with you afterwards?
Okay.
Okay, it's
so-
one-sided, so we can just scan.
Okay, so we are done with that. Any final words? Okay, seeing none.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys, everyone. A lot of good feedback,
That's what you get when you send us to conferences.
Okay, let's move on to election policies and administrative guidelines.
Yes, Ms. Fisher had asked, this has been a number of weeks ago, about our election policies, that it might be a good, with the upcoming election, to take a look at what we have adopted in policy, as well as any of the administrative management guidelines that we are using administratively for our staff, and that information is included in your packet.
Excuse me 1 second, sorry. Mrs. Coppen, sorry, Jean Coppen. You didn't get through all of my questions, did you? Okay, so maybe we can get together,
Or
and
could we even just send them to all of us?
I'll send you all of my questions, okay. I
Send them to
apologize,
us.
Dr. V.
Okay.
Getting
Yeah.
back to.
Okay, getting back to, were you done there? Okay, Kim, this was your question, I think, your
Well-
agenda item.
I wanted to take a look at, and I don't know to what extent we need to look at them. During the last election, the last board election, there was a lot of accusations that went flying around about principals bringing in candidates and introducing them to the staff and committees, Dr. V introducing them at events and stuff, and the perceptions and I don't, we got to stop beating up on each other, and I just want to make sure that we have it clear in policy, clear in communication. These are the rules, and just don't do it, and send a clear message, because we have 3 seats up, and whatever board gets on, whether it's the same 3 or 3 completely new people, I want to try and be able to curb my own behaviors. I want other board members and staff to curb theirs. I just want us to start working together, and are we clearly communicating this in our policies as they're written?
Okay.
Well, we've got that 1, 2, 3 coming before
Have you had a
that.
chance to,
Then we're going to fight over
Kim,
that, I hope.
have you had a chance to review the stuff that the superintendent gave us on because I think,
We just got it
Okay.
tonight.
because and there's numerous pages here, and, you know, obviously, we don't have time to read through them all to answer the questions that you just
Right.
asked. So,
I guess,
can I make,
can we bump it off? Can we
Can we-
take this and read it?
Can
And
we-
then throw it on the next session
you're
and
reading my
talk?
mind, you're reading my mind.
Because that's the thing, is I want us to talk, I want us to make sure we send a clear
Okay.
message from all of us.
Okay, and with the caveat that you read this in advance and forward any questions or comments to the superintendent or whoever the staff members are gonna address this, so they have time to reciprocate an answer.
And then we can communicate all this to Mr. Bayer also.
Yes. So when we have the next meeting, we can expedite this and we'll have questions and answers ready at the ready.
By the way, he's doing something fun tonight. His daughter's getting married, and they're doing tonight's one of the dinners for his daughter getting married, so good things.
Is there a study session already planned?
Yeah, we
for-
have what, we're finalizing the date for April, I think, what did we say? 13th, 15th? She asked me right away, but she's gonna send it out to the
Oh,
others,
no
but,
one asked me.
because I was in the office, so, it'll be mid-April, depending on our schedules.
Well, we probably also want to remember that we have an election in May also, so all of this information is pertinent to all elections, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's
Okay.
move on to performance pay. And Jim?
Dr. Galligan, we like your
Need a
purple
shave.
shirt.
Need a shave.
Good
I know
evening.
a good waxer.
Oh,
Sorry.
no. Hey. President Gregoire, members of the governing board, Dr. Weidenheimer, I have what I think is not too bad or long of a process here to kind of review where we are with performance pay and the performance pay committee. I would like to recognize that we do have performance pay committee members in the room with us tonight. Would you wave your hand, please? So we have some teachers and administrator of school. The committee is the same makeup as it has been in the several past years. We have 4 administrators from various school levels, 4 teachers, and 2 parents, and then I come in and facilitate it with some help from my administrative assistant. And the committee took a little bit different approach this year. We took an approach where we wanted to have some time with the board to make sure we are working on the right components of the performance pay plan, as opposed to build a whole plan from end to end, all nuts and bolts, and then bring it to the board and find out, well, we missed something that the board wanted, or we put something in that the board didn't want. And so we spent our first meeting, we've met 2 times, we spent our first meeting reviewing the existing plan, the plan that we have in place for this year, and then we also reviewed some of the state statutes around performance pay, some of the past governing board guidance that we've gotten around performance pay. Just made sure everybody, we have a couple of new members, we want to make sure everybody's on the same page, everybody understood kind of what our objective was and how we would move forward. At that point, we decided we would come together for a second meeting to talk about the components. So at a high level, what are the big pieces that we think we should have in a plan, and bring it to the board and get your input and guidance on, you don't like some of the pieces, or we're missing some pieces. And so what you have in front of you is literally the minutes that were distributed from the second performance pay committee meeting. This meeting was on February 8th, and we basically had the objective, the single objective, to identify components that we will recommend for the 16-17 plan. And I'm going to jump right down into that second part after welcome and introductions. We first, again, relooked at our current plan, which is basically 50% teacher evaluation, 10% responsibility hours, and 40% student achievement. put a little slash there that says district status. As we know, the student achievement piece this year is going to roll up to how do we do overall as a district, and it's going to revert back to a previous year since we will not receive a letter grade from the state again for 15-16 per the waiver. We then discussed basically, are these the components we want to stay with? And the committee decided that, we currently agree with these items, and then we reviewed a number of other items. So what you have next in these minutes are a bunch of items that primarily come from Arizona Revised Statute 15977, subsection C. I think you're all fairly familiar with that statute, and there are 12 items in that subsection C that talk about what current plans include. And I'm going to go down this list, and I'm first going to identify what we as a committee believe already is in the plan, and that we would elect to remain in the plan. And it's the number one item from that subsection C, school district performance. Number two, individual teacher performance, basically evaluations. Professional responsibility hours, which, by the way, is not in subsection C, but we would like to keep it. Number 9, input of teachers and administrators, and we believe by way of this committee we get that input. Number 11, teacher appeal process, and we have an appeal process which we have established several years ago and continue to enhance and make it even better. And number 12, regular evaluation. Excuse me, regular evaluation of the plan for effectiveness, again, primarily by way of this committee, and then board updates and discussions with the board. We think we have regular evaluation. I think I would stop right there now, and I want to go back to the beginning of that list and give the governing board a chance to opine and give us guidance and direction on, are these 6 items that I've listed so far components that you would agree should remain in the plan?
Questions, comments? Kim?
Well, there's, I think my first comment comes before we even hit the 6 items. It comes on your beginning where we have the statute. One of the things that caught last year, and one of my concerns is, I would really like for us to look at statute and just read through and make sure that if there's anything we as a board needs to do, because that was part of what caught the last time, was that it needed to come before the board certain ways, and they always write statute in some way to twist us, like no other. I just want to make sure that if there's anything that we have to do as a board to instruct or whatever, that we're doing it, so that we don't get caught after you guys do all this work and then realize, oh, the board was supposed to do.
No, we'll just roll up how we did it last year, right?
Well, but no, because
We presented it in public.
I think we had to have a separate public meeting.
Yeah, I think we have to have a, so we just need to, that's my first concern, is just that we do that, because I just don't want us to get caught with you doing all this work and then we'd miss something. But then after that, when we hit to your 6, I would like to see what the appeal process looks like, because I just don't know. I don't, I mean, I just don't know what it looks like, so that's what, does it look like the statute says? Because I just really don't know.
Mr. Gregoire, Ms. Fisher, we certainly can get, at the first meeting we actually reviewed 3 statutes that touch performance pay in one way or another. We can definitely get all of those to you to review. I will tell you that also in subsection C, or not subsection C, in 15977, subsection E, it basically, as we've interpreted and we've had legal interpret, it gives the board ability to add and or modify the items that are in the list of 12. But I think they're still worth looking at, these items. Secondly, I can definitely get you the appeal process. It's stated in the current plan, which is posted on our portal, but we can get you a copy of that. Say it again.
Sorry.
Subsection E.
E. Okay, I just didn't write it down when you said it, I'm sorry.
Okay, do you have any more questions? Because I'm going to open it up to public comment.
Not right now.
Okay, Maria, and then
Maria Leyva, and I am on the Performance Pay Committee and the Appeals Committee. And I just want to say that after the law changed and tied our evaluation, specifically now standards 1 through 6 are directly tied to our evaluation, that we need to revisit the appeals process more than currently as it stands. If you go to the Performance Pay Committee and point out irregularities or procedural errors that did not occur in your evaluation, and your appeal is approved, meaning that a developing rating that caused you to get fewer than 100% of your rating, which was not done with fidelity or there were procedural errors, the committee says we agree that this XYZ was not done, then currently the process says that your payout moves up to the next highest level, but your ratings that you questioned and were trying to appeal remain. This is tied to statute 15537. So it's for...
Hold on.
Hold on 1 second. Okay, so maybe so you're saying we're talking about the performance pay appeal. So you're saying if a teacher appeals their evaluation, you look at it?
Yes.
So the teacher's appeal to their evaluation goes to the performance pay plan?
Mr. Gregoire, Ms. Ordway, if I may, the appeal is, as Ms. Leyva pointed out, is about violations in the procedure and process of the evaluation. It's not the appeal for the Performance Pay Committee. It's not about the content and the rating of the evaluation. It's about there was a process or a procedure violated. We didn't hold a conference in the right time frame. We didn't have the right number of days between the first observation and the second observation, things like that, which are easily verifiable by the dates in the system where we keep all the evaluations, and we can decide as a committee, yes, there was a process violation here.
And you'd be the first place that somebody would bring that to?
I'm sorry?
You would be the first place and a teacher would bring that to?
President Gregoire, Ms. Ordway.
Ms.
We
Moffitt,
would be the...
Would you come up to the...
is there another place somebody would appeal their?
We would be the place they would come to appeal their performance payout level.
But that's what I'm saying, shouldn't their evaluation be appealed long before it ever hits a performance pay?
The content of an evaluation is not appealable, but at any point during the process, a teacher may alert the evaluator or even HR, and that does happen, that a procedure has been violated. And we do look into it, and if there is a procedural violation, we go through the motions to correct that. But as far as the law outlines, that if compensation is tied to evaluation, that you can appeal it. We have had legal review, and our processes for doing that through the performance pay appeal process is considered to be acceptable.
Okay, but maybe I'm just not understanding. Maybe I'm a little confused, but it sounds, one of the concerns I have is that their performance evaluation isn't appealable. Okay, I don't like the word appeal to begin with, because a performance evaluation is a part of a teamwork. We're building, this is what your issues are, and you should be working together. It's not punitive. So are they not allowed to give any input whatsoever?
Our evaluation process does include input. They upload artifacts. There are conferences, but it still legally is the ultimate responsibility of the evaluator to complete the final rating. They do have input, though.
If an evaluator gives an evaluation that the teacher just completely disagrees with, they have no recourse?
They have the opportunity to write a rebuttal. That's also in statute, and we give a time frame that's beyond what's in statute. We give all the way up to the first student day of the next school year for a teacher to attach a rebuttal.
And does their rebuttal then become part of that evaluation?
Yes, it does.
But you're now talking about technical items, like
no, a rebuttal can act. A rebuttal.
But I didn't really want to get into the whole teacher evaluation. I just want to get in. So the teacher evaluation part of this plan, if I didn't get step 2 in 6 hours and I was supposed to get it in, then I don't go to Human Resources for that. I go to the Performance Pay Committee.
You file a formal appeal with HR, the administrative assistant in HR. She then compiles the appeals and delivers them to an appeal committee made up of 2 teachers and 2 administrators.
As far as procedural breaches, Human Resources does review those for the committee.
Go ahead, I guess it makes sense because you're on
No,
board
to
with
answer
it.
some questions, so the rebuttal does not change the rating, which is why I'm bringing up, and I will tonight or tomorrow morning, I will email all of you the statute. It is specifically ARS, Arizona Revised Statute 15-537. Please pay special attention to section E, number 3, which requires the governing board to set up an appeals process. So right now, when the law changed about 3 years ago, that developing rating that I may have questioned or wanted to appeal that rating, the board says it has to set up procedures to do that. A rebuttal does not change the rating. Now, if I want to move districts, my potential employer can request my evaluation rating. And even though the Performance Pay Committee may have awarded and said there were procedural errors and perhaps that developing was not warranted, the developing stands and is potentially shared with my future evaluator.
Okay,
We're
excuse
saying
me. Oh, sorry, excuse me, Maria, but I think we're off topic
Yeah,
because she's talking about the performance play
Okay, she
for
is-
the
it is a-
evaluation of a teacher
Right.
and how it is impacted as opposed to the performance pay
Okay,
plan, which is
let
all
me
we
s-
can talk about tonight.
Yeah, well, the
and
standards 1
let-
through 6 are tied directly to
Maria,
performance pay.
stop right here.
Okay.
I understand your point. You want them all tied together, but only half of that is what we're on agenda to talk about. The other half is whether, I think the question is whether teacher appeals are permissible through that. And
That's another topic
and
matter. I'm
that's
not-
something that
we
maybe
just
as a
need to
board
have
we
it
need-
to another
I
meeting.
definitely would
That's
agree
all.
with you, President Gregoire, because we have a legal opinion that we certainly want you to consider whenever you do that.
Okay, so we appreciate that, but we have to stay within the parameter of it, and it'll be noted. And I would ask that the superintendent brief the board on the legalities and an
Absolutely,
update.
and
then
I'm-
we'll decide whether to take it further and how to do that.
I'm happy to share, Maria, what,
then.
I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, we'll do that, but then as far as it applies to here, how do we apply this to our conversation that we're supposed to be having?
So
So, okay, yeah, her point was to change the thing itself. That's
Yeah, that part I
beyond the
just
scope
wanted
of
the
what we're
technical
here for.
part.
Good
Okay, go
evening,
ahead,
President
Allison.
Gregoire and Board. My name is Allison Oswald Keene. I'm a 22-year veteran of Deer Valley School District. I would like to speak directly to the point of the appeal process for performance pay. As someone who was in a position of having to appeal my performance pay for an issue not related to my evaluation, so I want to make sure I'm on that page with you. The procedure was that there were to be 3 administrative people and 2 teachers, or 2 admin, 2 teachers, and a parent. The 5 individuals were supposed to be on the appeal committee to hear my appeal and others that year. For whatever reason, when I came in to do my appeal, one of the administrators had recused herself for issues not related to me. So there were 4 folks making a decision on my appeal. As best I can tell from the information I was given, there was a 2-2 tie, pretty much along lines of teachers and admin. The final ballot was cast by someone, the decision was made by someone not authorized by you, by HR, by the plan, to make a decision whether that should sway 3 in my favor or 3 against me. And this swing vote was placed by someone not on the committee, not in the listing, not even in the room when I made my appeal. And I had no repercussion from there. I lost my appeal. I would like to address that you all put some sort of language in place that would avoid this from anyone else missing out on the performance pay that might be due them because a decision was made by a non-involved person. And this does relate directly to the question you're looking at. There should be an odd number of people making a decision, and they should be the people clearly delineated in the process so that when anyone files a performance pay appeal, they know exactly what's going to happen. I walked into the room, there were 4 individuals, and I said to myself, there is a very good chance that this could, worst case scenario, go 2-2. So who's going to make the decision? There was no answer to that when I left the room. I received notification a few days later that a uninvolved party, no one named within the group, had actually cast the deciding vote, and I was denied my performance pay. So I respectfully request that you consider how that might be avoided for others in the future. It's not going to bring back my decision for the year that I lost my pay. However, I would like to see a consideration given for future so that these situations not come up, because it's like saying to students, you know, you've got 2 A's and 2 B's, and I'm going to ask somebody else that doesn't even know how your work happened, what kind of grade you should get. And maybe not the best analogy, but thank you for your time.
Thank
I
you.
guess
So
I guess
can
the first is we'd
can I
have
ask
to
a
see it.
can I ask a question?
Okay, let me,
Oh.
before you do,
President.
comments I wish the committee could actually address, because I think hers is, having the 4 was kind of not the norm and needs to be remedied, but
But that's not on
that's
the
something for
agenda.
the committee to commiserate.
On the agenda.
And I could actually address that.
No?
We do have the appeals procedure. It is made up of 2 administrators and 2 teachers. And it is those that are only on the committee. A tie vote is, it's dead at that point. It is a denied appeal. There is no 5th vote. It does not go outside the committee. Last year, we had 1 appeal. Actually, we had 2, but 1 was from the TAP model, which wasn't appealable under our committee. So as far as the effectiveness of the plan itself and the ability to have the appeals, the majority of the staff was satisfied with the process. So that's how our appeals kind of address that procedure. There wasn't a 5th outside party. It was just, it's a 2-2.
Don't you think it's problematic if you don't have a...
Well, I think for tonight's conversation, because I think we are really, really skirting, going just haywire here. For the purpose of tonight's, what's on tonight's agenda, I think the maximum we can do is say, of these 6 items, we would like to see this for future consideration so that we can, but it's not, we're just talking, we're not, we can't,
Yeah,
The
I
topic
would
line says certified performance pay. I think what the intention of that topic is for us to provide the committee with direction on what the governing board would
Wants.
like to see as part of the performance pay plan for the 2016-17 year.
Yes, technically, the intent was to ask the question, do you want us to have an appeals process? And you get a yes or no. However, I'm open to as much detail of input you want to give, subject to time we have to spend on the subject.
Let's just go one by one, and let's give them the input that you want, whether you want to include items 3, 4, 5 through 10, or take out 7. Or
The question he just asked is, do we want an appeal process? Correct?
Number 11 says, teacher appeal process, I think you left
Should be
out
kept in by committee.
Should this be kept in by committee?
don't-
Or or this should be?
Hey, I would think it's there, this process is set up until we come up with an alternative. It would
Well-
be silly to dismiss it.
I think the question you're asking, if I'm understanding you, is you want to know if we want an appeals process. My response is yes. Not for tonight's topic. I'd like to see it. That's it.
Certainly. And we have 4 committee members here, 3 committee members and the facilitator here that can take this back and say, this is how I would take it back and said, they want us to keep an appeals process. We might have to work on it some to get one that's going to pass. So we'll have that discussion.
Agree with, you want to keep it in there?
I do.
Or not?
Okay, I
That's
think,
great.
okay, what about the other items? Let's kind of push this along
Well, those
here.
are his
School
6.
district performance evaluation. So are you going to talk about the ones that you asked, the
Yes.
bottom ones?
Yes.
I don't want to jump ahead, so I'll.
So can we just say, number 1, school district performance?
Yes.
We as a committee wanted to keep it in there.
Yes.
Yep.
Number 2, individual teacher evaluations.
Of course.
Yes.
Yes.
Professional responsibility hours.
How are they used?
And how's that defined?
Basically, the professional responsibility hours are defined as 20 hours providing, doing responsible stuff out in your school that aren't part of your normal day and pay. And so it's outside. It's helping chaperones a dance, helping on a field trip.
So just guaranteeing they're doing that little extra bit.
Yes.
Yes.
That's fine.
Yes, I would like that in.
Yeah, I would say yes.
Number 9, input, and this is basically me saying, or the committee saying, we think we have this by way of this committee, and so we would keep number 9 in there.
Mm-hmm.
Number 11 we already answered, and number 12 is very similar to number 9. By way of this process, we are evaluating the plan at least on an annual basis.
Okay.
All right.
Yes.
Yes.
So we're going to keep all 6 of those components as components. To detail will come at a future date. The committee discussed adding or not adding the remaining components from that section C. And as you can see from the notes, we said not to include any of them. Measures of academic progress really is a short term, meaning measures of academic progress towards the academic standards adopted by the State Board of Education. The big measure we have for that is our state test, our Arizona Merit Test, and by statute we cannot use that for accountability purposes next year.
Okay.
Are you okay with us leaving that out?
Well, if we can't use it for
Right.
Can't use it.
accountability, we can.
If we can't use it, then it has
Other
to be
measures
left
of
out.
sorry, I'm going.
If we can't use it, it has to be left out, doesn't it?
I believe so, yes.
Okay.
Okay. Number 4, other measures of academic progress. That certainly then gives you leeway to use district common assessments, other standardized tests in high school, say ACT, SAT. We as a committee thought before consistency purposes across schools and across school types, we should leave that out.
Agreed.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, okay.
Number 5, dropout graduation rates. A very similar story. You okay?
They're
Maybe we could do a consensus vote. Thumbs up.
Okay. Leave it out.
Oh yeah, you can't vote.
Oh, sorry.
We'll do this.
You could do a negative poll. Attendance rates.
That's fine.
I
think
All of our attendance rates across our whole district are between 94 and 96%. I don't think you get anything out of that.
Okay.
Parent surveys.
we don't have anything official in that regard, do we?
We don't have anything that rates teachers. So we wouldn't do it at teacher level.
I don't know that I want to open up the door to just letting parents rate teachers. I mean, what happens if you peeve off a parent? I mean, every parent loses it at one point or another. They're going to stay really pissed at you for a week or so, and then the next week they know how much you love their kid and you're fine, but they happen to take the survey the week they were peeved. That's a real slippery slope in my book.
Okay. Again, I agree, but
Student surveys.
no.
I don't think we should use them for performance pay. I'd like to see them in other aspects.
Say vote by teachers. What teachers were you going to quantify in that?
Who's going to vote?
The statute says you could use a vote by teacher with a 70% of the teachers
That's what got us
approving the
last time,
plan.
isn't it?
Like
Pardon?
a peer review
No,
kind of thing?
it's optional.
Right.
Yeah, that would be kind of...
It's for the committee discussed this. We did kind of a pseudo vote last year. Ms. Leva helped us out with kind of going out in kind of in a paper pencil sort of environment. The problematic pieces of that are truly getting a 70% of your teachers to even respond. Let it again 70% of them to approve all of the components.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, I think we kind of nixed them all then, huh?
Okay. One final piece that the committee discussed was a piece that we've had in the plan in the past, and it was professional development. The committee would like to consider adding professional development, or maybe a combination of professional development and professional responsibility hours, or one or the other sort of concept back into the plan. And we agreed to this as a consensus, with a consensus vote that we should add professional development back in.
So professional development is different than professional responsibility hours?
Yes.
Yes.
What's the difference?
Education.
So, well, no, I get that, but your professional hours, so you can use it twice or once, or it's a combination, or how are we doing that?
They would be, in my mind, they would be mutually exclusive, but it doesn't mean we can't have both components in there and you say do either this or this. We don't know yet. I don't want to put words in the committee's mouth or sway the committee, but professional development hours would be hours that you spend for professional growth and the learning that you're going to get from that, where responsibility would be doing things for your students and school.
Okay, and that would be outside of the normal contract hours, like the full day off, that we do professional development the whole day? How does that work?
Potentially, however, we're not. That's more detail than we're trying to get tonight.
Okay, because that's going to be my question.
Right, for purposes
or
of...
whatever, that will be my question.
Right, I would suggest that it be outside of the professional development received during regular hours. Just my preference, though.
Okay. We're okay with that? Now, I'm on the second page, at the top of the second page, after the first bullet where we talk about putting together a plan to meet with this board. The next bullet is one that we've already kind of brought up. We said we're not supporting a teacher vote. The third bullet, last year we had a request to hold a public hearing. So let me just read this to you to see if it makes sense. We may need to include a public hearing if board requests, but committee would prefer to hold a meeting during the traditional board meeting for the first reading and then ask the board to approve at the second meeting. That's consistent with council we've had in the past that says that meeting, that board meeting, could be considered the meeting to approve the plan.
I really think we can do both. You know, school finance does it all the time, where we just have it on the agenda different, where it just has a one-liner that it's a public meeting at the beginning. We could do what you said, have the first one, and then have the second one, have it as the public meeting. It's just before, boom, anybody that wants to say something, we do it. And the only reason I say that is well, because I'm Pollyanna and I'm a real stickler for following kind of the letter versus just the spirit. And I would rather be safe than sorry. And we had a hearing, we had it public, and they could talk. It's not, I don't think it's going to be that much more difficult for us just to follow the letter. Okay. That would be my preference.
I would disagree with better safe than sorry, and it's semantics almost, but we do it by the letter of the law.
And I believe that completes our attempt to gather, unless, I take that back, there is one other potential addition here, and that is to ask the board, is there anything that we have not placed on this possible list that you thought should have been in a performance pay plan for our district?
Okay. Also invite anybody that wants to speak on this as well. You know what? Honestly, I'd have to give more thought to this and more conversation with people to see what else is out
Performance pay is not my specialty. I have to defer to, other than, like I said, following what I read in statute. It's just not my strength, so.
When does...
You have to tell me what to have an opinion on in this situation, so, or at least tell me what it is I need to look at.
Okay.
When does the committee meet again?
On Monday, the 14th.
Thank you.
Okay. So, anything else, Scott? That's
No,
it?
sir.
Okay, let's.
Oh, I got one more thing. Maybe we could get the minutes. I know we can get your minutes from the Monday meeting, but maybe we could actually just have them emailed to us, and then we could think a little bit more.
Sure.
See what transpired.
That'd be a great idea.
Yeah,
Okay, let's move on to budget. Jim.
President Gregoire, members of the board, Dr. Weidenheimer, we have some information to share with you. It's kind of an extension, if you will, of the information that we previously shared with you just Tuesday. I think what's I'll just set the stage here, that we were talking on Tuesday, and we've also shared with the negotiation solution team that if Prop 123 does not pass, that we are projecting a $1.6 million deficit. We think that there are some strategies that we can use, including use of our reserves and other one-time funds, that we could get that budget to balance. So we're not asking to look at a series of cuts to balance the budget if Prop 123 doesn't pass. Quite the opposite. We would like to have a conversation about what would be of interest by the board to include if Prop 123 does pass. And so we shared with you a list of what I'm referring to as budget fixes. So I want to thank Dr. Smith for kind of setting the stage. I think we need a very similar process. I'm just going to apologize in advance. I see Ms. O'Brien does have her glasses this evening. I think they will be necessary when you look at the size of the font. I can make adjustments to this.
Jim, I told you I broke my glasses, and these are the old ones.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you got the replacement ones. My apologies. And the reason for the small font, in all seriousness, is I wanted you to see the entire list. But I think what we are going to focus on is likely going to be those that we've identified as a priority one. And so I want to just kind of speak to how this list got developed, because it was an evolution process, and I want to then solicit input from the board as to things that are on the list and things that may not be on the list that are an interest, that we can make sure get included. Just kind of as a reminder, the negotiation solution team is going to meet on the 28th of this month to work on this list and hopefully start crafting a recommendation. We intend to preview a recommendation with the board on the 12th of April, with anticipations of the board considering it formally on April 26th. So we don't have a lot of time, but I understand if there's going to be another study session in April, that may also provide another opportunity for us to talk about next year's budget. So there's a reference number now, because the list, now I'm speaking specifically to the list. The list evolved over time, so we solicited input from several sources, from each through the cabinet process, through the negotiation solution team process, and we started this many months ago. And it's organized. The reference number is just intended to be able to provide a point of reference for a particular item. So if we were talking about item 6.2, everybody would kind of know, instead of trying to figure out where anybody was on the list. It is only 2 pages, but I think if it was in a readable font, it might be 10 pages. The numbering system, I did try and group together items that were similar in nature, and so anything with a decimal point, I feel, is relative to the other items. So 5.1 and 5.2 and 5.3 and 5.4 and 5.5, I believe, are a similar nature. They just came from different sources. The requester is who it came from. And again, with the reference number, it has nothing to do with priority. It just has to do with the chronology of maybe when it was received. Priority, we just used a simple 1, 2, 3 process for the priority. Description is just a brief description. We think that there's going to be more information that's going to be necessary for us to make decisions. We are suggesting that we will define an objective for each of these descriptions, as well as kind of I'll call it a pros and cons. You can call it strengths and weaknesses, however you want to characterize it, for each item, so that there can be at least a clear understanding of what some of the implications of each of these items would be. The FTE amount is just for us to keep track of how many additional people or bodies that may be, and the cost really is an estimate. I should probably retitle that column. So we're just working on trying to come up with what some of these, provide at least some framework around the amount. I'm sorry, which item are you speaking about?
Well, like you have, well, no, there is no cost. What about the ones you have no cost for?
So President Gregoire, Ms. Fisher, there are some items in here that we need to define better. So when it says increase certified teacher starting hiring amount, well, increase it by how much? So it's going to be relative to more details of each of the items. So the specifics of that were not provided. And so many of them don't have costs. And we only, I will say, we only attempted to cost out those items that were priority ones, with the understanding that it might be difficult to get to any more than priority one items, based on the length of the list. And I think it also, just in the interest of time, we just didn't want to go through the exercise if it couldn't be considered, if it wouldn't be feasible to even consider it. I should note many of the priority number 3s, a lot of those came to us well in advance of the formal action that the board took on the maintenance and operation override increase, the salary increase that our employees will enjoy. And so we reclassified all of any request to reclassify somebody, we automatically made a priority 3 because we received so many of those requests. And most of the justification for that was that the current salary or wage for that position was undervalued. We have corrected that in some ways with the M&O override, the increases that we provided, and especially because we provided additional funds on the base, our starting salary. We, if you remember, it was 80% for the classified and 75% on the admin side, and a flat dollar amount of $758, if my memory serves, on the certified side. So any reclassification requests, and those were received early in the process, back in probably November timeframe, we just automatically made those a priority 3. There really wasn't any discussion about those. So we have the list, and we have the items here. There are several items that are on here, and I realize that you're just seeing this for the first time. Well, we wanted to see if there are things on this list that I would characterize as are toxic, that you don't want to see in a recommendation, or any items that we need to make sure that we consider. We have had some conversations about some of the inequities in our salaries amongst especially our certified teachers, but it's also true amongst other employee groups due to the fact that we haven't been able to provide a meaningful salary increase for employees, or we've provided one-time funds that weren't attached to salary and things of that nature over these past 7 years. And we have also provided you with the scatter plot of the certified teaching salaries for the district. It is that is showing the actual years of service and the dollar amount for each of those years of service, and that's total years of service, or years of experience that a teacher would have. On what's numbered page 1 or side 1 of that two-sided document is the adjustment that we made for professional growth and for any Smart Schools employees, employees that participate in our phased retirement plan and return back at 80% of their exiting salary. Page 2 was what we first looked at, was not normed for Smart Schools nor for professional growth, and you can see that there was a great deal more disparate information contained in that particular graph. It got much better when we were able to norm it for the professional growth, but there are still some outliers, and this has to do with several factors. Most notably, hard to fill addenda is included in here, and so when we have those difficult positions to recruit, we have looked at people with experience beyond 5 years and have valued that at a greater amount than the value that we have given our own employees that have worked a comparable number of years. So you'll see many outliers there. So there's several ways to address that. And thanks to Dr. Smith, he has modeled a way that we can adjust for any of those outlying numbers. Several of the years are actually very close in terms of the variation that exists. If you look at, for example, year 28 looks really tight for some reason. Year 27 does not. And so there's really not a reason for that other than just kind of luck of the draw. But if we wanted to try and address that issue, we can do so with what Dr. Smith has modeled, and then we would also want to address what caused that in the first place and make sure that we at least have a conversation about what that could look like going forward, knowing that we will need to recruit for some of those positions. One of the other things that the committee has, the Negotiation Solution Team Committee has talked about is our hard-to-fill addenda in general. And so we've looked a number of different ways about hard-to-fill addenda, and just in the interest of time tonight, I'll be brief, but we have several people that are working in a position in which their colleague that they're working side by side with is getting a hard-to-fill addenda and the other person is not. And so that exists because they have been with us long enough that they didn't qualify for a hard-to-fill addenda when they were first hired, and when we implemented hard-to-fill addenda, we did not offer it to everybody that was in the position. So we know what the cost would be to be able to at least consider options to correct that and do it by position as opposed to more as a recruitment tool. I will tell you that we're probably going to have to start anew, meaning whatever value we gave for the hard-to-fill addenda, I don't think we'll be able to afford to be able to give it to everybody in the position, just based on the sheer numbers involved. But at least it would be consistent from this point forward, and we certainly would.
So we're still going to pay the ones who weren't in it, we're going to give them still less than what the ones who are new in it are getting, correct? Is that what is?
President Gregoire, Ms. Fisher, that's certainly what I'm suggesting in my comments, but nothing has been finalized. The actual expense to do, so we have $4.5 million. We would spend it all on addenda if we were to give everybody this using the same model that we have currently in both special ed and the other hard-to-fill positions, math and science at the high schools.
Very expensive.
So we are considering all of those options and just want to know what input we should get from the board. How much of the $4.5 million, if Prop 123 passes, should go to fix these issues, should go to, to whatever other causes need to be considered. Another one, just to throw one out there that might be a point of discussion, will be the athletic participation fee. We had to put that in. That was a contentious vote. Was not approved unanimously, I'll say. And so do we want to continue that going forward? And so that's a $400,000 budget line item for us to consider. And so that's on the list as well. So we've given a lot of people an opportunity to add to the list. We want to give that same opportunity to the governing board. Ultimately, we're developing a recommendation. It is the board that will make the final decision, and we understand that. It's much easier for us to ask for your input now than to bring it to you with a bow on it and then figure out that maybe we've missed the mark in some way. So that's the purpose of this meeting this evening, is just to kind of get the list at least out into the public and certainly into the hands of the board.
But do you want us to give you an opinion?
I have a question.
Oh.
I've got questions. Jim, are we going to, the report from the efficiency study, when are we going to get that?
Well, we got that, but
when are we going to go over it?
President Gregoire, Ms. Ordway, that is scheduled to be reported to the board April 12th.
Okay, and then we have the information from Advanced Ed, because I'd be interested in seeing suggestions that they have where we're lacking in supports, because when I look at it, I think that we have the assistant principals that were that left, that were gone because we couldn't afford it. Without seeing that study, I still think that that would probably be an option that I would like to look at, but I'd like to have some more information. So we would get that at the next board meeting.
President Gregoire, Ms. Ordway, yes. So we've been working on a list of both SWAY 1 and what we call SWAY 2 feedback, as well as the efficiency study, and how we intend to establish that as cabinet goals for next year. And it would certainly have some budget implications, but I wouldn't say that it's dependent on that.
Right, but it could give some information, because I think that we did get rid of a lot of supports that we should have back for our employees and students.
One more information. We have athletic fees on here. Can we get the actual number? We wrote it $400,000. Did we collect?
What did they actually pay?
Did we actually collect $400,000?
We're at $317,000, but we have not completed all of the spring sport collections.
Good answer. Good answer. Yeah, I agree with the athletic participation fee. That's one thing that's always affected students directly. And any reason we can give a kid to go to school.
I would like to see it stay. I don't see that we had a massive exodus of athletes dropping out of school because they had to pay for football.
Do we have data?
Yeah, is there data?
Did we have a
from
massive?
Well, on any of the sports, do we have information from the previous year when there was no athletic athletic fee to this year when we had one?
Well, we would have numbers, but it wouldn't tell you whether 3 kids decided not to participate
Right.
because they
Can't
couldn't
tell us what
afford
didn't
it,
happen.
and 3 other kids
Wave.
chose to.
Yeah,
We wouldn't have that.
wave.
The data that Jim's talking about, the collection, the number, the percentage of those that did participate and did pay, yes, we would have that kind of data, but we'd never know who didn't because they couldn't afford it and were replaced by someone who could.
Right.
Okay. Are you feeing and then waiving so you can run it out of In Touch, or?
Yeah, President Gregoire, Ms. Fisher, I don't believe we have the waive built into In Touch. I think it's just an approval that takes place. So we could probably calculate it, but it would be a calculation as opposed to an absolute. But that might be a good
Talk about
suggestion.
feeing and then waiving so that we have that data for next year if we do keep the fee?
Yeah, if we keep the fee, I think that might be a good suggestion. We'll just add a button that would
Well,
be.
no, that's the way I have mine set up. I fee them and then I waive, or they pay, one of the two.
Okay. Could we? I guess.
have
Do we
data.
have the number of students that participated in athletics
Last year.
versus this year?
Yeah,
Is
that
that
would be the key.
That'd be the only thing we'd have.
Is that right? Is that the only data we would have to compare as it relates to athletics? And you're right. We wouldn't necessarily know if it was related to the fee or somebody had an injured.
It's data, but it's not going to be useful for any analysis.
All right. Can I
Let me finish. I had a few more points here. Gail?
No, she.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. 10 FTE for special ed. Aren't those IEP driven? And how do
Where
we
are
get
you, Michael?
around having 10 FTE short?
Where is he?
It's on item 1. So, I know
Wait a minute,
there's,
which item 1? There's like hundreds of them.
The line somewhere down here.
it's
We're
number
blind, they're
55.
small.
Number 55.
Number 55.
Oh, here.
Shouldn't that be there by
Oh, okay.
statute that we have those teachers or not?
Yeah, we got rid of paras, didn't we get rid of paras so that we were gonna get teachers? Is that what this
We
is?
shouldn't be voting on it. It should be something that's dictated to us that we have to pay
Regulated.
for. Again, I'm just curious how it's in here. That shouldn't be an option. That should be a requirement from the state or providing.
President
those.
Gregoire, I might be able to speak to that. Anything that you see on the list here is a change in our staffing model.
Yes.
So anything that was required per existing staffing model, we did include in the budget projection that we talked about, the $1.6 million deficit if Prop 123 doesn't pass, the $4.5 million if it does. This is a request from special education to in some way that changes the allocation of the special ed teachers.
No, I get that, but he's asking more, isn't it statutory how much we have to have for special education? And are we at statutory and this is above and beyond?
Yes.
It's my understanding that this is above and beyond what would be the current staffing model, yes.
No, not no, that's what I'm saying, not current staffing model, because currently we're not staffing to statute. That's why I'm asking.
Well, wait a minute. Are you?
I recognize
is
there's a
that
high need there,
is that
so-
a
but I'm just
question
curious
or is that
what-
a statement? Because I'd like to know.
Oh, yeah, I'm asking. I'm asking.
Well, you
because I
made it
don't-
sound like a statement, so I.
Well, okay.
Are we staffing to statute at this moment?
Mr. Gregoire, Ms. Ordway, yes, we are. If you remember, 2 years ago, we went forward with, just as you mentioned, decreasing the number of paras and increasing the number of special education teachers. Every school was determined to have a base number of special education teacher supports. 2 years ago, when that recommendation was made, there were many schools that did not get to that base number of special education teacher support for a number of reasons. Part of that was cost, and part of that was we did not believe we could find the teachers. Again, last year, when we looked at the base number of teachers that had been recommended for K-6, K-8 middle schools and high schools, again, there was not money, and again, we didn't feel we could find the special education teachers. This recommendation is to not bring all schools up to base yet, but to bring 10 more campuses up to the base that had been recommended for special education teachers. So when Mr. McLarino says that this is a change in our staffing model, we are staffing the way we always have. However, we've yet to make that recommendation for all schools on the base support for special education teachers that had been recommended 2 years ago.
Then, in that case, I would reiterate my statement then, because no, we're not staffing to statute then, because we have to meet minutes. That's what I'm
When
asking.
you're talking about base level, was that our base level that we came up with? I mean, that we decided on? That's different than the statutory or additional than statutory?
That is correct.
Okay.
Okay, and that would, at least for now, I have to review a lot of these, but there are, yeah, I'll hold comment further. Any
Well, I have a question. What does DVESPA mean by job security? If you could just frame that, I mean, because it's kind of a broad statement.
President Gregoire, Ms. Ordway, that's an interest that DVESPA shares with us every year, and I think it's so that there's not that they want to be assured that their positions are going to be valued.
Oh, okay. I didn't know if they were worried that we were going to start parsing things out or not. All right.
Where we have this little gifted extra, where's gifted in this list? Is it even in the list?
Yeah, the gifted is on the list.
Where? It's really small, Jim, and even I have.
It's on
Number
the very top of the
22.
second page, right up here. I found it.
22 is one.
I don't even wear glasses, and I'm wearing them.
Oh, I do.
Oh, there it is. It is. It's the very first one on the second page. Right, but it's gifted. Still the top one on the second page.
There's also one on the first page.
Oh, did you want me to hold that over here?
I'm gonna yell at him.
This is .3, it just was so small. Yeah.
No.
There's 22s in the top section.
Oh, you're looking at the Bright Child Kindergarten.
Well, that's, somebody said
And
22.
you have to remember too, these lists have been under development for some time. You just started receiving emails and heard about it Tuesday night.
Okay,
And there
go
might
ahead.
be different ways.
But I was gonna ask the time frame on this whole process.
President Gregoire, so again, we would like to make sure that we have some direction from the board so that the negotiation solution team can do something on Monday the 28th, and then certainly try and prepare something. I don't know that we'll be able to finalize a list or a recommendation in one day with the negotiation solution team. I have not sent this. They've seen this list, but there were some additions that actually took place on Tuesday, so I haven't sent it back out to them because I was going to include any information that you provide this evening and send this out to the committee either tonight or tomorrow, and so that they can start to prepare. But really just want to know if there's anything, if there's anything that you're yearning for, and you can ask and I'll be able to find it. If I know it's a little confusing because the way this thing evolved over time and the numbering scheme there, but if there's something that you guys want to make sure that we include, I thought this would be the opportunity to make sure that that was taken care of.
Sorry, President Gregoire, real quick. So do you need input before March 28th so that we can process this? If I can't give you an answer in minus 60 seconds since our meeting's supposed to be over.
Mr. Gregoire, President Gregoire, Ms. O'Brien, it would be helpful before the 28th, but I don't know that it has to be in a formal setting like this either.
So we could email you or email Dr. V?
Please, yes.
Okay, and then I have another question. A couple of these line items refer to see document emailed on 1/4/16. That's a document that was emailed to you, not to us.
There are internal notes for
your
reference.
notes. Okay, I just want to make sure if I went to try to go look for something, I shouldn't be looking for those.
Well, yeah, correct. You would not be able to find those, and most of those, if they, again, this is just the skeleton of the list. We would create what objective we're trying to accomplish with each of these items, and then kind of a strengths and weaknesses or pros and cons, whatever you want to refer to for each item. So more detailed information. Most of those that said see an email, we captured that, but if it was a priority 2 or priority 3, we didn't feel like it was likely going to be considered. So those were our internal notes.
Okay. Do you have anything? Ann,
I do, but go ahead and let Maria go.
Okay, go ahead, Maria.
Maria Leyva, so in your consideration, I also would like for you to think about Classroom Site Fund. As you know, that it's divided into 3 funds, Fund 11, 12, and 13, and especially focus on Fund 13 because we're, as certified employees or those eligible for the Classroom Site Fund teachers, we're continuously told that Fund 11 is considered part of our compensation, part of our salary. And when it goes up, it's an increase to teacher salaries, but those years when it was in the negative, it was never a pay cut because that's what the state does. So I want you to consider Fund 13, the infamous or famous Fund 13, is where the district used to fund a lot of things like recently TAP and Ames intervention, which we no longer have Ames. So Fund 13, it's at the discretion of the board how much of that can be used towards employee salaries. And back in 2001, when Prop 301 began, our board set that famously at 41.8% for employees. There are other districts that give 80 up to 100% of Fund 13 to their employees to be used for salaries, but Deer Valley continues to only have that set at 41.8. Whenever we bring this up as an interest to NST, we are told that that percentage and that amount is set by the board. So you, the board, please consider increasing that amount and releasing more funds to be used for employee salaries. Thank you.
Yeah, I don't know if that qualifies for our discussion tonight because it is a separate fund, but it does need future consideration, I would think, because we haven't had that conversation about, especially since we had Ames, because a lot of those are still titled as Ames supports. So anyway,
President Gregoire, if I may, the classroom site fund allocation won't be known until the end of March. So we won't know exactly what that amount looks like for next year until the Joint Legislative Budget Committee creates that projection for us. But it's not just the 41.8%. There's also $1,574,000 of Fund 13 that also goes to teacher salaries. So currently 73% of Fund 13 is going to teachers, just to be precise.
41 and 73?
No, 41% plus $1.5 million. It's a fixed number.
Oh, okay.
Certain number. I think Virginia set that way back when.
Can you say that again? Because
Sure, it's 41.8% plus $1,574,000.
Equals.
And so the total amount of Fund 13 that's already included in teacher salaries is 73% of Fund 13.
Okay, I think as a discussion item, this needs to be as a future board meeting or future study session on the whole Fund 13, because again, the last time we had this conversation was the previous time I was on the board, and that's when there was Ames and all these other things we were on the menu items we could use them for, and right now some of those don't exist. So what are we using our portion of the funds for? And just so everybody can see all sides of it, and whether it's justified or in everybody's mind. But that's just for future consideration. So
It could kind of go in a Friday update, just to whet everyone's appetite.
Actually, that's
Or
more
we
than
could
nah.
just drop down to one meeting and have one study session, one meeting. We
That
could
would
actually
be,
discuss stuff. That'd be cool.
That would be a conversation. I would want more than just information. I'd want to, because that's been a.
Wet our whistle.
if
Oh, okay.
Dr. Weitenheimer,
Okay.
if I have additional questions,
Go ahead.
you want me to go ahead and send them to
Please.
you, and then
Please.
that information can be shared with everybody.
Yes, we try. We need to make sure that the information that is received by one is received by all.
He's very good at that.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn the meeting.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
I wasn't threatening you, was I?
I'll take it away from you. I have a brother. I can disarm you. Just